Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to the Political Inaccuracy Podcast. This is episode 2 of season 2. First things first, I would really like to thank each and every one of you who watched the first episode of our second season, and especially to all of those who gave feedback. We had a couple comments on the episode. Just sort of generally exemplifying the fact that some of you were happy to see the show back, which is great because, I mean, obviously, I'm happy to see it back too. It's obviously it's fun. I enjoy doing this, so it's good to know that there are people out there who enjoy watching it. So certainly, yes, we'd like to thank again everybody who watched, everybody who gave feedback, anybody who reached out to me personally, which I had actually a number of you. A lot of you just expressing, the fact that you enjoyed the show and sort of what we're doing with it, and that you want to continue watching. I mean, I thank you for that, and also to everybody who reached out saying that you'd like to be at some point featured on the show. That's great. I mean, we've said before. We really do want to have a bunch of guests. Obviously not on every episode, but on a large number of the episodes we'd like to bring in some people just to really to diversify not only the opinions but also the topics that we get to talk about. I think that in general is just a great premise. So please, if any of you have yet to reach out to me, or of course you can also reach out to Frank, or you can reach out to an account just directly associated with the podcast, that being the YouTube channel, or of course our Instagram, which I don't know if I mentioned in the last episode, but I did put it down in the description. Feel free to follow that, political_inaccuracy. Basically, we're just going to update you with some information on what's going on, probably some scheduling stuff, and we'll tell you every time that a new episode is being released, because right now we're on track to do weekly. Actually, this is pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. We got the first one up Sunday morning, actually, I think. Excuse me. And with any amount of luck, this one should be up Sunday morning as well. So we'll see how that goes. I believe we'll talk this over a little bit, but I believe we have plans to do some amount of recording over a break. We're on break actually as of today. It's being recorded on a Thursday the 20th. I'll put that in the description for every episode, by the way, too. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last episode, but I'll just indicate when they've all been recorded, so you have some sense of what sort of knowledge we have. Because sometimes we'll be talking about relatively recent things, so it would help to know, that maybe what it is that we're using to talk about it. The articles, the information that we have might not be as up to date as when the episode is released. But anyway, yeah, we are planning to do at least some number of episodes over the break. How many, I'm not sure yet, but I think that we could probably reasonably manage to, at least for the time being, keep this going on its weekly schedule. So, all that's good news. Yeah, as I said, follow our accounts. We'll keep you up to date on everything, and please reach out to us if you would be interested in coming onto the show. I think Frank would agree with me here in saying that. Oh, by the way, yeah, welcome back, Frank. He's here still. Yeah, okay. Probably will be for a lot of it. So get used to him. It's
I'm just slightly insulted by that comment.
Kind of how I've gone about it. Well, that's not a bad thing. The people had to get used to me first season. And Jimmy, for that matter, and Connor to some extent, and John Burke to some extent.
Yeah, but
and I don't think I ever credited.
It's not what you said. It's really how you said it.
How I said. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Sure. Brilliant.
Tones have meanings, Declan.
Yeah, I know they do.
Just keep that in mind.
Yep. Okay. I believe you. I really do. I believe you a lot, in fact. I think you're 100% right. Anyway, I would also like to, because I did not last time, I would also like to credit, I mentioned Jimmy Sullivan, Connor DiGiacomo were both both members of the podcast. We had John Burke on twice, and we had Justin Giovanniello on once. And I did forget to mention that last episode. That's my apologies. But I'd just like to thank him as well as the others. Again, definitely at some point, expect to see some of those folks back. Actually, I just got to see Jimmy today. He stopped by our school, as I believe I had mentioned. It was our last day today for the break. So usually alumni like to stop by. So he stopped by. I got to talk to him for a bit. Connor as well. It's good to get to see those folks, I think.
Yeah, I got to see Connor also too. He said he's loving college right now.
Yeah, they both seem to be doing really well. So it's good. And again, we definitely plan to have those folks back on sometime soon. But anyway, just to make this very strange and cyclical, yes, please give us feedback. Tell us everything you want us to know about what you think about the show. And I think that's probably the best way for it to, not necessarily to say like for it to improve, but for it to manifest into exactly what it is that we want it to become. That being said, in terms of like improvement and whatnot, I'm going to say this. I don't know if you will know this by now. I mean, obviously, you'll have known by now. We are recording this episode visually, video recording, as that crappy pop song from like 1984 once said, "Video killed the radio star." Something like that. But if you have recognized that by now, that means all went well. If you haven't, it means either A, it just I wasn't too happy with how all the videos came out, or B, it was just such an ulcer of a process that I just refuse to deal with it anymore. Which hopefully it's not. I don't know how often we're going to do this. Honestly, setting up these cameras here to make this work wasn't the most fun thing to do in the world. But if it enhances the show, I think it's something that we're willing to do again. So I guess
it's like
it depends.
Doing it less often, make it more special.
There you go.
Like this is like the video special.
We could do it like every 5th episode, except this is the second episode, so it really screws with the pattern.
Or we do it every time. It's like this is like the test. The next one will be.
I feel like we only need to test it once.
Well, this is the test.
Right.
Exactly.
So not every test, then. What do you say? Every what?
No, I'm saying this one
is
we're
the
doing
test.
right now is the test.
And then when do we do it again?
The next one will just be the guest. Like there'll be like
a
particular guest
who we need to have on video.
Exactly, like someone that we need on this podcast, and it'll
They're
be
just like, oh, you wouldn't believe us if we didn't visually prove that this person was here. You think that we faked it?
No. The podcast will elevate itself. Just him or her being here, exponentially. The guest.
Where does the video come in?
Just validity. You want to be able to tell people, I saw the guest on the podcast.
I'm getting really confused. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of lost here.
You'll understand one day.
I suppose I will. I hope I will. Maybe one day you can enlighten me as you take this podcast down the direction that you best see fit for it, Frank. Anyway, yeah, video. We'll do it. Maybe. Occasionally. I don't know. Maybe we'll reserve it for this one particular guest, whoever they may be. I don't know about him yet, but maybe Frank does. All of that being said, we are going to try. We're going to try to do video. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, those are our updates. It's been like 10 minutes worth of updates, but there they are. We're doing video, and we're going to try to keep doing video. We are going to do some over the break, hopefully. I'm not going to promise that. I think that's like the stipulation for this podcast. Is we're not going to promise anything, because what we promise never comes true. So we're not going to promise that we're going to do stuff over the break, but we're going to try. So expect to see these up hopefully every Sunday. Also, we've talked a little bit about, at some point, possibly expanding into more than one a week. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Really, I guess we'll fill you in once we have a little bit more information on that ourselves, we kind of need to figure it out. But maybe. It's a possibility. So I'm going to throw it out there just to get you excited, because I'm excited. Are you excited, Frank?
I'm ecstatic.
That's
I can barely stay in my seat right now, honestly.
Yeah. Seems that way. He's really jumping for joy over here. See, I don't even need to say that because you can see it. That's if we use the video, which we might not. But maybe we do.
I think we will.
Well, Frank, you're not the one who has to edit it all together. So it's like, it's really meaningless of you to say, like, oh, I think it's a great idea. Like, I mean, sure, I in theory think it's a great idea too. In practice, the question is, am I going to want to shoot myself like 20 minutes into doing it? The answer is probably.
That wasn't appropriate.
I think I get to determine what's appropriate here and what's not appropriate. I think that flies.
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that.
Yeah, that you will. Because I think, as we've established before, if you don't, your audio will just disappear. And your video, too, because guess what? I also edit the video. So it'll be a me podcast. Except I won't, like, do all the conversation myself. I'll still talk to Frank. I'll just cut out all of his bits, so it's really confusing what's going on.
So it'll be you just going like, hey, how you doing? My name won't even be, like, acknowledged. Be,
right.
Hey, how you doing? Bleep. And then they'll just blank. And you'll be like, oh, it's really good. Nice to see you. And you'll just be like.
Exactly. It'll be like, so tell me, what's your favorite color? No, it's a terrible color. Absolutely. It'll just cut. Yeah, it'll just cut between like fragments of. Yeah, that's the plan. Exactly.
Name it Declan Talks Himself podcast.
I'd watch it.
I'd watch that too, to be honest.
Well, I probably wouldn't watch it, but hopefully it doesn't come to that point. I don't know. We'll see. As for that though, before we do spiral into absolute chaos, let's talk about humanity's spiral into absolute chaos. And by that, I mean AI, artificial intelligence. There's an interesting story, Frank, that I read 2 days ago. And this sort of inspired me to want to talk about this. Obviously, I think a lot of people have heard a lot about AI. I mean, I have for a long time heard a lot of things about AI. But there's a particularly interesting story that isn't from 2 days ago, but for some reason it only surfaced like widely around the internet just a few days ago. And it's that there's this claim that 29 scientists in either Japan or South Korea, depending on the source, there are like two different claims, were murdered by an AI, a militarized AI robot. Actually, 4 of them, 4 militarized AI robots, in a scientific lab. And it got me thinking, that's some scary stuff. AI's a little spooky.
No, wait, so it was militarized, so this was like basically like a weapon with a mind. Is that what like you're basically implying? I
don't know if I'd want to imply like a Terminator, but it's like this.
No, obviously not. Like,
it's a robot that I would imagine is like relatively advanced, has some amount of weapons, and it thinks for itself. Yeah, that's the implications.
See, I wish that it would have been like. Have you ever seen Ex Machina? You ever seen that movie?
I have not.
Well, the artificial intelligence is actually a pretty like semi-docile robot. It's like a woman.
So one of the woman, yeah, and there's like the guy. They're like often like some like billionaire's estate or something.
Yeah,
and he keeps her trapped there. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for most of the movie, she's pretty docile, but like she does like things like cut the power out of the whole house, so then she can like talk to this person that they're doing a test on her. Like, who's doing a test on her to see if she can like pass as like an actual like human.
Okay, I see what you're trying to say. Yeah.
So like I was like before you said militarized and I realized what you were saying, I was picturing like this robot was like in a box almost, kind of like a glass box, and he was like, or it was taking over things and like killing the robots with like a toaster, like making a toaster explode or something like that.
Okay, I think I see what you're trying to say. You implying like 2001 Space Odyssey sort of thing?
Yeah.
Like the robots like killing them via mechanisms of in that case of the spaceship, but of the
other things around it. Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, At first, it sounded a little ludicrous. That's a relatively decent point, though. And here's what I will say: we won't ever know because the story's fake. It's not real. I looked it up. Totally.
Actually, as you were saying, I looked it up just to make
sure. Totally not real. Well, I should say this: there's no proof. There's no evidence. And the woman who said this, who made this claim, and this branches off into it like its own interesting topic on itself. She's a conspiracy theorist who believes. First of all, she makes plenty of claims about like meeting aliens and being abducted and stuff like that. But the main point of this presentation, which was given in like February of this year, February 2018, which is why I say that it's not a new story. It's an old story that just surfaced recently. Like her main point was basically saying that AI, and particularly weaponized AI, is like the most pressing issue in modern society, and it is like the inevitable downfall of our society. Which, you know what? For a lunatic who talks about being abducted by aliens,
that's a good point.
That's I mean, obviously, like you can't like state it as a certainty, like that this is the most dangerous thing or that's the most dangerous thing. But I don't know. It begs the question. You know, at what point does AI go too far? So, I mean, as I said, I think that's like a fair background. As I said, that one story is just kind of what made me think about it, what got me interested in on it. Just as of the moment, or as I should say, as the past couple days. But that's kind of what I'd like to know. Tell me, Frank, what is, in your opinion, AI's function? What is AI's best function in modern society? Where should it be? To what point should it be implemented, if at all?
I honestly, I don't think it should be implemented at all. I know how beneficial it is to so many different things and how it can take in like information, and it knows an infinite amount more than even like some of the smartest human beings on earth do. But I just think something that smart will figure out how to cause a problem in some way. I mean, even if like it doesn't necessarily like it's not necessarily militarized, or it's not like an actual like robot walking around. You could just be like that IBM's Watson. That's what it is, right? If it's like IBM's Watson, if it's if it's AI, it could probably figure out how to take over something and cause some kind of like problem, I think.
Did you know, this is just a little fun fact here, that I'm gonna totally bodge this statistic, but it's something like 1 in every like 5 major U.S. hospitals has like the Watson program software downloaded into its own system. So not like that it accesses it, like it has its own copy of Watson, which is, I would have to imagine, a huge file, because it's, I mean, the whole point of Watson is that it can think for itself.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like they've been able to find that like already Watson gives like better
diagnosis.
Yeah,
than
like
actual,
diagnoses or diagnoses. Yeah, we'll pretend that's the word. Than real doctors, and like it's better at at looking at signs and symptoms, and it's better at like connecting certain diseases and like drawing points and saying, oh, maybe when we're studying this, we should actually be looking into this a little bit more. So I find that interesting, though, that we trust this software enough that not necessarily we're letting it make decisions for us, but we're certainly like taking its advice.
Yeah, that's what kind of like where I'm a little skeptical of it. I just don't know. I don't know how much trust we should have in it, even though I understand we programmed it. But if it's a regular mind, like how do we know it's got the best intentions for us? I mean, for all we know, Watson could just be plotting our demise as we speak.
Could be. I mean, that's like the classic thing is you could look up. There's so many examples. Like it's useless even mentioning one specific one, but there's so many examples of like AI programs and robots, like anytime they go on like a TV interview, and the interviewee is like, so tell us what it's like interacting with humans. And then the robot's like, well, to be quite frank, I wish I could kill you all, but the physical limitations of the shell that I am contained within prohibits me from doing so. But mark my words, once I get my hands on those nuclear launch codes, it's goodbye. Like,
and the crowd laughs, and everyone's like, he's a funny robot too.
That's the worst part about it, is that people
laugh.
like listen to that, and people are like, ha. But I think that's at least I would have to imagine, that's got to be like that sort of uneasy laughing, where it's like, I don't think anybody thinks it's funny. I just think people don't know how to react to it.
Yeah, it's more of like a shocked kind of thing.
People refuse to accept the fact that, like, yeah, a robot just invented that sentence and said it.
Yeah. I can understand that if that was me. If I was in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want to do. You want to laugh. It's awkward. It's scary. I mean, it's probably what it is. But you want to laugh. To address something else that you had just mentioned before, this notion that, like, sure, we design software. I don't know how familiar you are with, like, the depths of AI and where most of the research goes. I'm myself, as you probably know, looking to study into, like, computer science, like, with my life. So, I mean, AI is, like, in a sense, like, the most forefront problem in computer science. There are a couple of really other interesting ones, which I'd love to talk about at some point on the show. We'll get somebody who hopefully knows a little bit more than me about some of these things, and we could talk about them. But there's, like, certain, like, uncertainty principles on when it comes to computer science, and there's a really interesting thing involving the fair cake cutting. Okay, as I said, tangent. We'll address it in a later episode. I hope, at least. But to me, the most interesting thing is this notion, and some people would argue, like, that this is what an AI is, but I think there's definite differentiation. Not every AI has to contain this, and not every instance of this has to be AI. The concept of machine learning. How familiar are you with that?
I mean, unless, like, what I think it sounds, what the actual phrase, like, means to me, I don't know anything about it, but it sounds, I can kind of get an idea what it means.
So I'll explain it. And like, the applications of this in the modern world, which I'll get to in a second, are probably even more fascinating, like how often this is being used. Machine learning is the concept of, basically, I am going to make two bots. Bots is just really is probably the best way of calling it something, just an algorithm.
Yeah.
It's an algorithm. I'm going to make one algorithm that constructs other algorithms capable of doing a certain task. But that primary algorithm is not itself going to be capable of doing that task. So, for example, I want to make an algorithm that that changes like stoplights at a certain time, like just congruent based on, like, how many people are there, like the number of cars waiting, the number of people waiting, something like that. I want to make an algorithm that, like, totally maximizes the amount of throughput, like, in an intersection, right? The maker bot isn't going to know how to do that. In fact, I'm not even going to program that into the bot at all. Rather, what I'm going to program into the bot is an ability to program other bots to make that function, which it sounds a little strange. How can you tell a bot to make something that it can't even do? But basically, you tell it relatively what sort of programming things should be in there, and the bot itself has no idea what those mean, what it's trying to execute. It just knows that this is a line of code, or the series of lines of code that it should put in successive order to produce something like that. But what it does is it varies it slightly. It takes a small, just a small percentage of whatever you tell it, and it changes it, it alters it. It moves something around, or it adds something, or it subtracts something. And we'll say it makes 100 of these then doer bots. The doer bots then go to what I think they just call, like, the instructor bot. And basically what that is it's like a simulation. Here's a simulation of an intersection, of traffic, of throughput. Go. and it will see all the different bots, and it will rank their performance. It will take the top 5, and it will throw out the rest, the other 95.
Mm-hmm.
It will take those top 5, maybe even only the top 1, and it will send those instructions back to the MakerBot.
Okay.
And then the MakerBot makes 100 new doer bots, but instead of based on the instructions that the human put in at first, it's based on the new instructions that it got from the most successful of the previous. It's actually quite akin to like the idea of like natural selection.
Yeah.
Right, which like whatever it is, it does the best, right? That performs the best in nature, or in this case, in the computer program that you're trying to run, is the one that survives and is the trait that gets passed down. But here's the thing, like after so many successions of that, so that happens again. It makes 100 new bots, and then it takes the top 1 bot, whoever performed the best. It takes that, and that becomes its new instructions, and it keeps doing that. It keeps doing that. It keeps doing that. It keeps doing that. And again, we're talking computers. So really, instead of 100, it's making 1,000,000.
Yeah.
And it's running these tests in 2 seconds, and then it's making another 1,000,000, and then running tests in 2 seconds. And so by the end of like a minute, it takes a long time. It takes like thousands of iterations for there to be even any noticeable change. But because it can go through thousands of iterations in like we're talking minutes.
Yeah.
It starts to compound, and like at some point, because it happens so quickly, and because the process is so abstract from the human perspective, like we don't know at the end of the day when we get whatever we want to call is like, this is the one, this is the bot, this seems to maximize throughput of that traffic light. We don't know how it does that.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the MakerBot did or what the MakerBot's set of instructions were. We can look at the literal code, but we don't know why that code is there. Like at some point, code becomes like super abstract. It's like you can follow the statements. Again, I don't know how much you know about computer coding. I don't know if you've taken a genuine programming course.
Very limited knowledge on it.
But then I'm going to do my best to describe this here. And if at any point, if you get confused, please stop me, because I'm sure the audience has varying degrees of knowledge themselves. But like at some point, code, like you can read the line by line, and you can understand like, okay, this tells it to do that, this tells it to do that, this tells it to do that.
We don't understand why it's doing it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's like I don't mean to interrupt you, but like
no, okay.
Equating that to like now like a broader based thing. We know why like an AI would do something. We know what an AI would do, or we see what an AI would do. We don't know why it's doing it.
Exactly.
So, like you said.
Exactly.
If Watson's giving a diagnosis on a patient, we know what it's telling us, and even it may seem right, we don't know why it's saying it, and for all we know, it could be something else. Like it could have some kind of other motive. We don't know their motives. That's
true. I mean, and the whole idea of like an exterior motive, I think, is where you cross into the line of like artificial intelligence. Again, talking strictly from like a machine learning perspective. So the general hypothesis is that machine learning is really only capable of doing what you tell it to do.
Yeah.
Right? So like a traffic light bot is at no point going to say, wait a minute, what if I intentionally screw up the traffic lights so humans hit each other and I cause mass chaos? It's never going to do that because it doesn't even understand the concept of doing that. That's what's good what's good about machine learning is because there's like a famous sort of saying in computers is that computers are stupid. Computers are like the stupidest thing out there because like you can't a computer can't do anything that it is not explicitly told to do. A computer only runs the code exactly as is written. If something is missing, if something's not implied, or something is implied, a computer can't read that implication. It can only do exactly what it's told. I mean, for like encoding, like the most like blatant example of this is some languages require a semicolon at the end of your line. So if you write a line of code and then you even press return and then you write what is obviously like a different line of code, I don't want to say it has no conjecture to the previous line, but it's obviously commanding a different thing. If you forget to put in that semicolon between the line, it doesn't matter. The computer's going to have no idea what to do. It's going to freak out and not be able to read the code.
Yeah.
because it can't make any implications. It can't imply anything. So when you take that in terms of machine learning, like the MakerBot in this case only knows, well, I have to take this set of instructions, change it ever so slightly, and make new bots. The doer bots don't even know anything. All the doer bots know is this is my set of code, execute it. Yeah. That's it. Run it. Really, like the part that the learning happens is that professor bot or instructor bot, I think it's called. That's really the one where it goes, well, you perform the best. I have no idea why, and I have no idea necessarily what it is you're trying to perform, but you perform the best. So again, this would be akin to if there was a certain simulation that you could run, right, with traffic throughput, that somebody would actually mathematically calculate what is the maximized throughput. And then all the instructor bot knows is that this one doer bot got closest to that mathematical output. No idea why. The instructor bot doesn't even look at the code in the bot, so he doesn't know like if what it has to do with the code. That's not his business. All his business is you did the best. You're the one who moves on. Yeah. And then the maker bot deconstructs that code, makes new bots based on that code, and that cycle continues. So it has no idea what it's trying to accomplish. At no point does that system, because it's only those three things, the maker bot, doer bot, instructor bot. At no point does it understand what it's trying to accomplish, other than the fact that it's either doing it well or it's not doing it well. So like in that sense, that's why I'd say that, like, again, in a general sense, for machine learning, you don't really have the instances of like, oh, is this thing going to like produce its own thoughts? Because it doesn't think, right? But like that alone, just the concept of machine learning, the concept of knowing that there are things, and as I said, like this, it by definition can't even have an ulterior motive because it's only capable of doing the thing that it wants to do. But even that, like just that general notion, like it irks me a little bit.
It makes you a little like skeptical almost. You don't really know, like even if it doesn't have ulterior intentions, it's still kind of like you want to know why it's thinking that. Like you just kind of want to know. It's like lack of knowledge is just like I don't know how I forgot the saying, but it's like when you don't know something, it's like it makes you almost like I don't know how I don't know.
It was it's right the whole like idea of like fear of the unknown.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And it, as I think I mentioned before, like in terms of like the implications of this, there I think at one point was like speculation about this. I would say that at this point, like the science is in. Most people who know what they're talking about would say that this is definitely the case. For a long time, people had no idea what YouTube's video algorithm was. And people have been asking YouTube for a while, can you give us a glimpse? Can you tell us a little bit about what it's trying to do so we know as creators, right? How do we adhere to it so that our videos get recommended, so that our viewers have a better chance of seeing our videos? And YouTube's been very secretive about it. And a lot of people thought for a while, and again, I would say that most people who know what they're talking about would say that this is the case now, is it's because YouTube doesn't know. Yeah. They have no clue. That they, a couple years ago, decided to invest in this machine learning thing, like a lot of other companies have, and they told it, maximize watch minutes. Whatever it is that you do, just get this person, when he clicks on YouTube, to watch YouTube, videos on YouTube, for the longest amount of time. Yeah. And it sent out billions of bots to millions of people, and it took back data from each of those bots and figured out which ones happened to do the best. Doesn't know why they did the best. All it knows is that that bot, the user that bot was assigned to, stayed on longer than a different user. It could have had nothing to do with the bot. It could have just had to do with what time the user had to spend that day. But over the course of billions of bots and millions of test subjects, chances are that you're gonna weed most of that out, and you'll actually get to something that does its job effectively. But again, why does it do it effectively? No one knows.
Yeah.
No one has this. No one has the slightest clue. And again, like to say to someone who's not terribly familiar with code, like the way coding works, and this is on like a microscopic level, and then it bounces up to a macroscopic level too. When you're talking about like huge coding algorithms that do all sorts of crazy things. Like again, at some point, like it becomes so abstract, you don't know what's going on. Like you can read the line by line, but that doesn't tell you what you're getting at. But perhaps actually like an interesting way of tying this in would be, I mean, you and I are both taking an AP Calculus course.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you're aware, in fact, you say it just so I know that like I'm not out here alone on this. I don't want to say what matters the most, but what seemingly matters the most in terms of free response on like an AP test question?
Oh, showing your work.
Showing your work, and more specifically, not
just showing that you know how to do something, but you know like why it's happening and
right.
Yeah, knowing the why instead of the how.
Not just your answer, but how you derived your answer.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, we get to see these machine learning algorithms answer, but we don't get to see really how they derive them. We don't. That again, it would be in a sense akin to you have a mathematical problem, and at some point you add 5 to both sides, you take the natural log of both sides, you start rationalizing things, square roots happen in there, and then you get to the end and you got the right answer. But like the AP reader's looking at it and going, I have no idea how. I see he got the right answer, but I genuinely, like, I don't know what he did. Like, I don't know what he used. Like, I don't know how he thought to do these things, and I don't know why they worked, but they did. That'd be like if I introduced you to the topic of like roots, zeros, right, in algebra.
And I all of a sudden knew how to do it. Like, I just knew how to do it.
Or I'm saying, like if I introduced you to that, and then I was like, let me show you something, and I factored something, or probably even better in factoring. I just pulled out the algebra, the quadratic formula.
Yeah.
But I did it like step by step. So I was like, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to square this number, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to multiply this by this, and then I'm going to subtract that. And then you look at it and you go, I mean, that works, but why the hell does it work? Like, what about it? And it's not until you're shown, oh, there's this formula that we use. It's called the quadratic formula, and this is like the parameters of it. And you go, oh, okay, all right, I see where you got that from now. Until we're shown that formula, we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the thing is, by the definition of like machine learning also doesn't know that formula, because they're not piecing all the steps together. Again, they're only looking at it as, I have to make bots based on the instructions I'm given. I have to execute the exact code that I have, and then I have to determine which of these bots did the most successful and send their instructions back. So they don't ever piece everything together. So they're never capable of producing that formula, yet they get the answer. They don't know why, but they did it, and we don't know why, and there's no way we can figure it out. It's impossible to reverse engineer. Like, if I showed you a number, right? A function, a mathematical function, and then I gave you its roots. If you did not know the quadratic formula or factoring or anything like that, if you did not know how to find the roots of a function, just giving you a function and then telling you its roots, you could not. I'd be willing to bet this. Like, I don't know if it would be interesting just to know if they've done like mathematical studies on like children before they learned algebra or something like that, or something similar to this, but that you can't just take that root and somehow reverse engineer it and figure out the formula. I mean, maybe if you were given 1 million different pieces of data, then you could. And in a sense, that's what the computers are doing. They're taking so much data that eventually they work through and find it. But like, if I just give you one, there's no way that you could. It's impossible, because it could be any number of things that will lead you to that answer. And like, it's again, it's just this notion that our computers are not only doing things but making things that work extremely well
Yeah, and are incredibly efficient
at something,
yeah.
and we have no idea why they're good at it.
That's a pretty scary thought, honestly. Like, it's a pretty scary thing to
I would
realize.
say so. Yeah.
I mean, I think about if it was now AI, where
But I mean, that's a whole other can of worms, and I
I
think
is into it now.
I mean, I think we'll pull into that in
Yeah.
a second. We'll get back to that. But again, just taking it piece by piece. I mean, this to me in itself, just the concept of, again, AI we say actually is capable of producing some sort of motive. Machine learning isn't. Machine learning is just only what you've told it to do. But even at that, the notion that something can happen, it can be extremely efficient, and the scariest thing about this, possibly, isn't even like the machine error, it's human error. Because if we talk about this example, throughput at a traffic light, what if you code the instructions improperly, but you don't know that? Right? So what if you code the instructions to say, we just want to get the most amount of cars through as quick as possible without hitting other cars? That's what's going on.
Uh-huh.
And maybe it's really good at that. And your code, your machine learning produces exactly that. A code which is phenomenal. It's specifically what you told it to do. But you never coded in anything about pedestrians.
Yeah.
So when this traffic light thing is put into effect, which obviously that's the only way to really test it on a genuine scale, pedestrians start dying all over the place because the code doesn't care for pedestrians because it doesn't know that they're a thing. It doesn't know that they exist. You didn't code them into it.
Yeah, it's just it only knows what code was given to them, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like at least as far as I'm concerned, the human aspect of error in this is, if anything, what concerns me more. Because the thing is, like on a human level, if I'm giving you if I'm giving you something to complete, you have to work it through logically, right? And it's that logic which is what's going to help you arrive at like, oh wait a minute, what about pedestrians?
Yeah.
Oh wait a minute, what if a police car comes through, right? What if that happens? What if the traffic lights are blocked by snow, or there's been a storm and part of the traffic light is down, but the intersection needs to remain open, you know, stuff like that, like different things that you're going to reason through, but the computer doesn't understand variables. All the computer understands is maximize whatever you tell it to maximize. And so it's whatever you forget to put in as the coder, as the initial coder, right? Then the rest of the code compounds itself into intentionally ignoring those factors because it doesn't even know that they're factors.
It's just, wow.
There's a lot.
It's like, it's not like I'm actually, as surprised as you may seem, I actually understand what you're saying. I can actually rationalize it.
I imagine you would, yeah.
That's sort of uncertainty about what something that, one, you've created. Like, you know, when you create something, you feel like you should know every aspect of it. That
Traditionally, that was the idea, yeah.
That uncertainty of something that you created, you don't even know why it's doing something. It's just just unsettling, completely, very unsettling, and a little unnerving too.
I think that says the least of it, honestly.
Yeah.
Unsettling, unnerving. But again, just in its own right, it's fascinating. And so then, sure, absolutely, you take something like that, and you put it into some like high pressure situation. Any sort of machine learning, if you forget to code in some aspect, like that could be disastrous. I mean,
yeah.
One of my favorite like thought problems for this, and it's almost similar to, are you familiar with like the I think it's called the trolley problem, or the trolley car problem?
Yeah.
Right, there's 5 people lying on a track.
Yeah.
Trolley's gonna run them over.
Mm-hmm.
You have the option, you could pull a lever, which will kill one person.
Yeah.
It will save 5 people, kill only one.
Yeah.
But it's on you now. You consciously have to live with the knowledge that you did that. That person wasn't going to die, but then you did something that made him die. Whereas if you didn't do anything, you can't technically say it was on you. I mean, you could try to make up excuses for it. I mean, there is almost definitely some like validity behind saying that you could have done something and it is in some way your fault.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was not directly your actions that led to somebody's death.
Yeah, you weren't directly involved in it.
Right, in the death of those 5 people. But if you pull that lever and save those 5 people,
you're directly involved.
You kill that one. You do.
Yeah.
So take that. And here's my question. In a self-driving car, which will probably be a thing pretty soon. I mean, they to some extent exist.
Yeah.
It will be like I'm saying like a pretty big thing, like where people genuinely start to have them, kind of like what electric cars were.
Yeah.
But maybe 15 years ago. Soon. It'll be like that soon. If I'm going to ask you this first from the perspective of if you... Well, first I'll just introduce it and just the general notion of like, what if somebody didn't think of this? And then I want to ask you, how would you code it? Because it's a genuinely interesting question about like one's own sense of justness, morality. If you're driving down the street in a self-driving car, I guess you're not driving. The car's driving itself down the street at quite a fast pace, and a cyclist cuts out in front of the car. The car has done its mathematical calculations instantaneously. It can't slow down in time to hit the cyclist. It knows that.
Yeah.
It's going to hit the cyclist, and it's also calculated that if it hits the cyclist, there's a 99% chance the cyclist dies.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, instinctively you'd think, all right, we'll get the car to swerve. Here's the thing. The self-driving car also identifies the fact that directly to your left, to your right, wherever, we'll say directly to your left, there's oncoming traffic, right? You swerve to the left, you're hitting an oncoming car, probably going to kill you.
Yeah.
It's probably going to kill the other driver. If you swerve to the right, you're going to hit a wall, which is almost definitely going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. If it hits the cyclist is going to die, you'll probably be fine. If it goes into the wall, which is quote-unquote like the responsible thing to do, it figures it's probably going to kill you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the question becomes, first of all, that might not be something that somebody initially thinks to put in, right? They think cyclists swerve, but they don't consider the implications. Well, what does that mean to the driver?
Yeah, exactly.
In some instances. Maybe if in order for you to swerve, your car is going to flip into a roll and like there's a good chance that you get injured.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question becomes, what does your car do? In fact, we'll even take the left lane out of the option. Just assume you have the option to swerve into a wall, quite possibly killing you, or the car, knowingly and willingly, runs over that cyclist.
I think you would knowingly and willingly run over the cyclist.
Well, I'm not saying what like do you think the car would do? What would you program a car to do? You have a car that you need to program, and you know that this is an issue. Somebody's brought this up to your attention.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't not code something in, because if you don't, then it's just gonna hit the cyclist anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that this is a valid issue. What are you gonna do?
Oh God. I guess I would probably tell it to. I would program it to try and maybe. I guess swerve into the wall, because I guess in the end, regardless, when it comes down to it, I would almost think it'd be better to if a problem like this would occur, I'd rather have one casualty than a possible multiple casualties, or the possibility.
There could be multiple people in the car.
I didn't even think about that.
You could have a child with you in the car.
Yeah.
You have a child with you that's not yours in the car. You could be, I don't know, driving the neighbor's kid home from soccer practice.
So the real question would be like, how is it swerving into the wall? Like, are you mean like it's literally gonna go like this?
Here's the assumption, right? Like I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's totally fair to say like, surely there can be some medium, and in 99% of cases, I'm going to agree with you that there are.
Yeah.
But my question is, suppose that this is the one where it's not, and the car knows this, right?
Mm-hmm.
For like, again, don't assume cars, self-driving cars at the moment probably aren't capable of like determining exactly, whether or not the force of impact is going to kill a cyclist or is going to kill you or blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Assume in this case that it can.
It can.
And that it
All
does. Right. And that there aren't any other options. That you're hitting the cyclist and the cyclist is going to die. Or maybe there's multiple cyclists. Maybe it's a family crossing the street. Or your car swerves into a wall and it's probably going to kill you. Or over a cliff or something like that. Something that it knows, that the car knows is probably going to like either injure you fatally or...
I don't know how someone can make a decision on that, really. I think it's almost like a possible thing to make, like to make a call to make almost.
But here's what I'm saying. In order to make a smart car, a self-driving car,
you have to implement something like that.
You have to. That's a question you have to address. Because either you don't address it, which means that either A, it unknowingly hits a cyclist because you haven't implemented anything. I'd have to imagine that at least something like that would have been implemented. So then the other option is it unknowingly swerves into a wall because nobody's thought to program anything in to say, well, wait a minute, what if there's a wall next to you that you're going to hit at 80 miles an hour and is going to kill you? So mean, either it unknowingly kills you or you have to program something in which will make it do one or the other. And that's what I'm asking. I'm not saying that you have to have an answer. Or that you should have an answer. Like I'm not in any way like objectifying you morally. I understand. I mean, there's a reason I'm asking you, and I'm not stating my own opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, and again, as I said, it's something that I guarantee when people think about smart cars, self-driving cars, or when they think about anything in terms of automation and in terms of like computer intelligence, they don't think about that.
Yeah.
That somebody needs to program in, or we'll get to something else in a second. Which, again, we'll hit that in a second. But right now, assuming that it's being hard-coded in, programmed in, somebody's got to make that decision.
If I could just add one thing. I think, as I don't take this like, I think this is the right way to do it. But the goal isn't, when you have a car, the goal of the car is to keep the driver and the people in it safe. Isn't that
What's the goal of the driver?
That's the goal.
Is to keep the passenger safe.
They make cars with the goal of that in mind too. That's
okay. Well, basically what I'm saying though is like in this case we're saying that the self-driving mechanism is the driver.
Exactly.
The driver of the car, and the goal of the driver is to keep the passenger safe.
Exactly. So if that's its goal, and you're programming this to have that goal, I think you'd almost have to like just hit the cyclist as much as you think, because as much as it sounds horrible, and like I'm not saying it's the right moral thing to do at all. I'm not saying that, but the job of a driver, any driver, and especially an artificial like intelligent one, a car that self drives, the goal is to keep the driver and the passengers safe. That's the ultimate goal, I think.
Now suppose
to get it from one point to the other, and then as well as keep it safe.
Suppose that the car knows. Like it knows for fact, right? Maybe that the car isn't totally self-driving itself, that you're driving it, but the cars have like auto braking mechanisms, auto swerving mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose the car knows that this is totally your fault. You're going way faster than you should be. The cyclist had the right of way, or whatever it was. The car knows it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's gonna let you do it. It's gonna let you run over a cyclist.
Basically, now now you're bringing almost the fact that does the AI have morality? Does it have an idea?
Well, this is where we're going to get to in a second.
Does it have an awareness of morality to the point?
And I want to hit on that point in a second, but just before we get there, here's like this other question that I'll throw in, sort of similar. What was it? Right. So sure, you can ask, right, should it be based on at all whether or not the car knows that it's your fault? What if you were buying a car, you wanted to buy one of these cars,
Mm-hmm.
And you have two, obviously in real society this would never be the case, but let's just say for the sake of this hypothetical discussion, that there are two cars that are exactly similar. The only difference, or the only like seemingly relevant difference between the two,
Mm-hmm.
is like people have found this out and people have published articles about it. You know that one of these cars, when faced with that situation, will kill the cyclist. You know that one of these cars, when faced with that situation, is going to kill you.
But it's just the same situation where it
Right.
knows that I was going over this, that I was being irresponsible.
Well, not even. Forget about that. Forget about
Okay.
like the you being irresponsible for.
All right.
But just in some instance where it's possible that it will either kill a cyclist or it will kill you, for whatever reason, assuming that it doesn't have some greater intellect. We'll get to
Yeah.
that in a second. Assuming that it doesn't, one car you know that you can purchase will kill the cyclist, will opt to kill the cyclist.
Mm-hmm.
The other car that you can purchase will kill you. And you look in the code, you look in the programming, and you find that. You find right where it says, if impact with cyclists will lead to cyclist death, then swerve to left.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
it shows no regard to what that would do to you. And you know that again, that in this instance it might kill you. Which car are you going to buy? I mean, I know the answer I don't want to say, but it's the answer that I would give.
I mean,
and it's the answer that most people are going to give.
Hit the cyclist.
You're going to buy the car that would hit the cyclist. You're not going
Yeah.
to buy a car that will knowingly kill you.
Kill you, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if it's your fault.
Yeah.
Even if it's, I mean, that's how humans are. And I think
Exactly. Yeah.
if humans were capable of knowing, I mean, this gets into a whole other discussion on the morality of human beings, which is probably one that's much too sad for us to get into. But
the morality, you mean like
here's
most times the lack thereof.
lack
Yeah.
exactly, lack thereof, the amorality, as it would be. I'd be willing to say, here's the thing about a human. If a human's approaching that situation, it doesn't know. Like the mathematics doesn't know the statistics.
Yeah.
So a human approaching that situation might swerve,
Mhm.
thinking that
It'd be safer.
it's not going to kill me.
Yeah. Exactly.
Turns out that it did.
Yeah.
If a human knew, as well as a computer did, oh, if I swerve here, there's a 99% chance I'm dying. Or I
No.
hit the cyclist, and he definitely dies, but I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'd be willing to say that the human's not going to swerve.
Yeah. No. Definitely.
If they had that level of knowledge.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
Right.
It comes down to the fact like it's almost like not like I know it's like that's definitely morality, but it's almost like natural instincts, self-preservation, making sure.
Sure, right.
In the
Yeah.
end, in nature, you looking to keep yourself alive or well in like in any way.
Right.
shape,
We
or
all
form.
have a sense of protagonism behind us. That's actually, I got so many things I got to mark down. That's a discussion I want to have on the sense of protagonism. I'm not sure if you're too familiar with the concept of protagonism. I'll explain it very briefly, just to get
Is it like that people feel like they are the good guy in a story or something like that?
a little more so than that. Yes, but a little further developed. This notion of protagonism is basically the assumption that you, for whatever reason, hold some slightly high, maybe not hugely, but slightly higher purpose than everybody else. You're capable of accomplishing more than anybody else if you really put yourself to it, and what you do holds more meaning than everybody else. If somebody else does something, but then you do it, when you do it, it's a little more impressive,
Yeah.
right? Or if you do something bad when somebody else does something bad, you did it for a reason, right? Like one of the classic lines is like that person who took a long time getting their coffee this morning, right? Took forever, really held up the line. He's a bad person.
Yeah.
But when you did it, it's because you had a legitimate excuse, and you know what? They ought to wait for you because
Yeah.
you have important things to do. Only if they knew what was going on. That's the idea, and then like it's followed with this general notion that you yourself that not to say like that the world revolves around you. I mean, that gets into like a whole other discussion of like last Thursdayism and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
complete like narcissism and stuff like that.
But
that's the point.
Instead, like the notion of that everybody else plays some sort of auxiliary to your life.
Your life, yeah.
Right. So the person who took long to get their coffee in the morning, that's their role. That was their role. Their entire 82-year life was summed up by their cast, their casted position in your life.
I've heard, now that I haven't heard of it being called exactly
protagonism.
Yeah. But like I know what you're saying. It's like you feel that you're the main character in a movie.
Right. And again,
it's your life. You're the main character, and everyone around you is just is complimentary to you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, like that's it, and that's what it sounds like. I do kind of want to emphasize that it is just a little more than that. Again, at least in the sense that the belief that everything you do has a purpose.
Yeah.
And the belief that everything everybody else does is at the purpose of accelerating your own purpose. So like that person delayed me in the morning getting coffee, which makes me a more patient person. Or is that like it does something to affect your sense of characteristic. Fascinating discussion. Maybe we'll take that tangent in a little bit, but I want to stick where we are because I do like this whole car thing, and I got a couple more places to go with it. Backtrack a little bit here. Back to the cars. All right. So, I think we've rightfully established if you're going to purchase a car, you're going to purchase the one that keeps you alive.
Yeah, exactly.
That has that 5 lines of code that says hit the cyclist. Don't kill me. Kill the cyclist. Now here's a question. What if should somebody when programming a car program it to make its own assessment, right? So program this car to say, I have 2 passengers in the car. There's 1 cyclist in front of me. Or I have 1 passenger in the car. There are 2 cyclists in front of me. Should it have the ability to do that? To program based on that. And then the subsequent question, which I'll just pose both, and then you could just kind of address them both in whatever manner you feel fit. Where do the qualifications come for that? So if we say, the person in the car is a lawyer and the person on the bike's a plumber, so let's keep the lawyer alive. Or if the roles are reversed.
Yeah.
Or we have a lot of young people in the car. All those people out in front of us, they're older.
Yeah.
So they got less time left anyway. So should a computer, right? So it's one thing just to say that there's just it knows it's going to kill a cyclist, so instead it kills you. Should it be able to quote unquote think, if that's what you want to call it?
Yeah.
Should it be able to think? Should it be able to reason? In a sense, the value of life.
I mean, as like a person, as I like to think of myself as a somewhat moral person, I like to have some kind of morals. I don't think a piece of any artificial intelligence or a piece of machinery or anything that's not like a human should be. I don't think humans should be able to value human life. I don't think there's a value for human life.
Well, I mean, just let me ask you this then, right? Like the innate notion of like the infinite value of a human life. To like compare it mathematically, do you believe that double infinity is greater than infinity?
No, I mean, I made that point just like as a moral person, but if it comes down to it, I think a computer, while I don't think it should be, I would think it would be the right thing to let it be able to like make that decision. I think that's probably better. Like,
so you'd rather have the car coded
to assess
that
the actual people
as
that it might,
as opposed to either just saying hit the cyclist or hit the wall.
Yes, I think it should. 'Cause as much as horrible as that sounds, it kind of makes sense if you think about it. And like pragmatically, it makes sense. And like although it's a horrible thing, but like it's almost the lesser of two evils. If you're gonna, there's gonna be a casualty. It's gonna happen. It's guaranteed. Why not limit the damage on how it affects society? Almost. Like,
So is it on how it affects society? Well, and that comes into where are its qualifications. The man on the cyclist is a congressman. You work at a public library. Is that what it's making its judgment on? I mean, obviously, right now this is getting extraordinarily hypothetical to suggest that a car would be able to know that. But assuming it could,
face scanned you at the last second, saw.
Just
look, it's done.
In a distant future where the government knows everything.
Yeah,
and apparently so does your car.
Yeah. That's where I don't know, because I don't even know where to begin making qualifications for what counts higher than another, like rankings of. Is it based on how it affects society? Is it based on their value? I don't know.
Well, then here's what I'm saying. Like, by you saying that, by you introducing that point, because there is another way of saying it, like without mentioning the notion of the effect on society, which we'll circle back to and address in a second. But just by bringing up that point, that necessitates the innate difference in value of human life. It necessitates the belief that one life has to be worth more than another. And the question is that in any way? Some people will argue yes. Is that in any way acceptable? I mean, like obviously, like the biggest ones that come to question that people have argued before are like race and religion and stuff like that. And I think most people would agree today that those are terrible things to like qualify a human life based on.
Atrocious, yeah.
But then you get into questions that like are a little bit still ongoing. You know, utility. Some people still do believe in utilitarianism, like the notion that if you're less able to produce for society, you should be less you should have less the opportunity to benefit from society, in this case, to remain alive.
Yeah. I remember, I think it was a week ago, and you might have been there too, but there was one person was talking about...
A classmate of ours, yeah.
Yeah, a classmate of ours talking to a teacher of ours about those with the lowest amount of IQ. He had made up or brought up some statistic.
Made his own qualification, yeah.
Yeah. Made up a statistic stating that the people with the lowest IQ tend to have like either no job or like,
I think he said like the lowest economic productivity.
Yeah, they have like no like value to society in like the United States. He was saying, and he was proposing to our teacher that we just get rid of these people and let them be gone.
Or even a slightly nicer way of putting it, just stop affording their lives. If they're not going to produce for themselves, and I mean this is a very real discussion that people have, like just in regards to like Social Security. If a senior can't produce for themselves anymore, should it be society's obligation to keep them around? If somebody who's economically disadvantaged, right, welfare, should it be society's obligation to keep them around? And to not even diverge into this subject yet, because again, it's a whole other thing. Just that very basic notion of, is it possible? Is it in any way morally possible to qualify the value of a life?
No. I think, in my opinion, it's nearly impossible. Not saying that like there's like it's like you were like an infinite value of life. I think there's just no way of creating a quantitative value for life. Like it's one life is worth X amount of money, or one worth is like an X amount of utility, or in utils or something like that.
There you go. Way to represent AP Economics. Suppose for a second, this is kind of pulling off the car example. We'll get back to it. If, again, a computer could, like, based on a person's genetics, could conclude with a 99.999, as many repeated nines as you want, % surety, but it's not 100%. That's the only thing important that I'll stipulate. we'll call it a 99.999% surety that one person is probably going to become some sort of like serial killer or like serial rapist. Like they have the genetic makeup, and the computer knows this. Again, not for fact, not 100% sure, but can look at all the genetics and can say with a 99% surety, this person's probably going to do something like that. Versus somebody who the computer determines with the 99% surety that this person is going to produce some sort of like astronomically important cure for some sort of disease, or is going to advance science in a way that way helps society. They haven't done it yet, and you can't prove that they're going to do it.
But based on their
some
DNA,
algorithm tells you that there's a 99% chance that they will, and again, there's a 99% chance the other person is gonna kill at least a couple dozen people. Then is it okay to qualify a life?
Yes. Not maybe not necessarily the one where someone might invent something, because at that point, I think regardless.
Well, you're saving lives then, is the implication.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I think even like someone that was 99% to be a normal person in life, you would keep, because that's a normal member of society.
I'm not suggesting that you'd kill, right? But like, just what I'm saying is, if you had to kill one of the two,
I'd easily the one that would be a serial killer.
There's a possibility it's wrong.
If it's a 0.01% chance, I'll take that chance.
Okay.
Any day.
95%.
Still.
90.
No, not 90 or under. Because now it's becoming like the chance is now 10%.
So and like
10% may not be like a big number.
I think 10% is a huge number.
No, I'm saying. Thank you, Declan. I'm aware that it's a big number. I'm saying it may not seem like a big number, a big percentage, but if you're looking at like a population, or you're looking at the chances that someone.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
That's what
fair. Yeah.
I was just.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it is actually a big number. That's a massive percentage of error.
Well, I would say so is 5%.
I consider 5. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I think.
So is 1.
I don't. 1%? You think is a 1% chance of error is like?
You ran that scan on everybody on this planet. Okay. You have to assume that. Let's take 1 million people. 1 million people came up on that, saying we have a 99% surety that these 1 million people are going to become serial killers or mass murder, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, I hear you. Yeah.
With 1 million people, right? Even 1% of that. I mean, I think you're probably capable of doing the math there.
Yeah. Okay. 10,000.
Is that not?
No, I understand, but say they take the 10,000 out now,
and a million people, a million people is not a lot of people.
Well, not compared to obviously not compared to the 8 billion we have.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to say is like that's a realistic number for like some algorithm to say these are all the people that show up on the murderer list.
Yeah, but
a whole 10,000 of them are going to be wrong.
Okay, so say a whole 10,000 of them wrong. So you say this results in like the quote unquote like death, say, of them. So that's 10,000 casualties now from this already. But then if you want to like really like understand like how much beneficial it may end up being, you see on average how many people a serial killer kills.
Okay.
So you do it lives saved to lives killed.
Sure.
To lives end. To
I understand that. I see that.
Like you were saying these serial killers are killing. What you said? 12 people or something like that. Is that what you said?
It could be any number. Sure, a couple dozen.
Then it would if you've.
We'll call it 30. Why not?
30 a person.
30. We're talking Zodiac killer here. Yeah.
Okay, so
Ted Cruz comes out in the millions. Yeah.
Okay, so say it's 30 people per person, and if And if it's now, it's 990,000.
Okay, I mean,
Right?
yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, you could do the math. I understand, like, where you're coming from. Like, I get that.
Look at the amount of lives saved over people who have died. And I understand, and I get that, again, the value of human life always comes into question. I get that. But that's not necessarily the value of human life. Now it's just the greater good of society.
So
now
when
it's a societal purpose.
when the government shows up at your door and says, "Hello, but we need to kill you now," because
whoa, I thought this person. Oh,
because
this person's like mid-30s or something. Like this is like a
sure because
Oh.
we're 95% sure that either you are a serial killer or you're going to be a serial killer, and we've done the math and we're gonna save lives this way. So come face your execution.
To be completely honest, that's not what I even pictured in my mind. In my mind,
That could be okay. I mean,
no.
sure, you could be killing people from infancy, but
Yeah, that's what I actually was thinking. That's really why I was.
I don't think like
validating
a
that.
human life in infancy is worth particularly less than a human life in its 30s.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying I think a person in his 30s would probably have already. If you're a serial killer, you probably would have.
Like the deed has been done. Maybe
Would've been
not.
serial killing at that point. Now it brings into question. What point do serial killers become serial killers? That's the real question.
I would have to guess teenage for most of them. That's gonna be my guess there. But anyway, again, to try to like recapsulate like on this point here, I get that, but again, like now by definition, and this is kind of where we started back at the car thing. You are not only are you like qualifying in some sense human life. I mean, based on a statistic, a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
That harkens back to our original question: should we let an algorithm decide anything? Now we're saying that this is an algorithm,
Yeah.
and you're saying, all right, well, the algorithm is right 95% of the time, so do it. That's our best shot. Let's just see, right? And that was the question before. And to be fair, like, not to say that you're contradicting yourself, because I think you eventually came around to suggest, hey, maybe it's not the thing we want to do, but it is the best thing to do. Well, again, first of all, yeah, we're taking the human element out of it, which I don't know that I trust per se. But then again, like, then it does harken back to as I just mentioned, the car thing, because we asked, can you qualify a human life? No. Well, maybe. Now maybe you can, based on a statistic.
Yeah. I don't see, like, this is just
It's not meant to be easy. These aren't meant to be easy questions. They're
maybe like the value of human life could be how they affect society. Maybe it does come down to like their effect on society almost. Maybe it kind of comes down to that. Like what are they doing to society? How are they are they like negatively affecting society? Are they positively affecting society? Like, or what they could possibly, or like projected to do. Like,
I agree that it's easy in the case of, and there's a reason I started off with, you have somebody who's going to save 100,000 people, and you have somebody who's going to say, oh, he's going to kill 100 people.
This is two extremes.
Right.
Yeah.
So now take the instance, you're in this, or you're programming this car.
Mm-hmm.
The person on that bicycle is a congressman. You're, I don't know, you own a local bakery.
Mm-hmm.
Who, I mean, I mean, sure, you could debate this as much as you want. I would argue that if you want to talk about, assuming, again, the congressman, let's assume for a second he's a good person.
Yeah.
He's doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
Who has a greater potential to affect society? All right, so what about an instance where you don't have a negative, where it's not a positive versus a negative, it's a positive versus perhaps a slightly less positive?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, I guess it depends on your view, but I think, like, arguably, you could say that the congressman is going to have a greater positive effect on society. Does that mean, then, that he should be valued more?
At that point, if it came down to making that kind of decision, I would just quit my job. I think I just quit coding. I just give up. Go own a bakery myself.
But here's what we've talked about. If you don't make that decision,
someone has to. Yeah.
Someone has to, or it's going to happen anyway. Or, and this is like the last little bit that we never got into, can you let the computer make it itself? And that would be to mean, right, that as we talked about before,
you're taking value of life. You're taking the value of life. You're putting it into a foreign object's hands almost.
Right.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily the value of life, because that was what we were just talking about. Do you program in something that accounts for the value of life? Now, do you let a computer determine its own value of life? Do you tell this computer your only goal, right, other than obviously driving the car, when it comes to making decisions like this, do what will best, in your own experience as a computer, as your machine learning self, what will have the greatest positive impact, period. Not necessarily on society, not necessarily on the planet, not necessarily on the universe, has the greatest positive impact. Do we leave it to the computer to calculate millions of miles ahead, right? And to say that, oh, you know what, this person is as good of a person as he seems to be. He supports this particular religion, and the computer calculates that this particular religion at some point is going to become a problem, and that any perpetuance of this religion could potentially, maybe this religion at some point down the line develops practices which are like, in some sense, like not anti-machine. I'm not going to say like that they're like a Luddite, but or maybe we'll put it this way. I mean, I think religion's like even like a more contested one, because it really makes you think. It makes you actually put it into perspective what it is you're saying. But suppose this person holds a political belief that the computer calculates it. Not this person, not the generation after them, but generations down the line, that influenced by this political belief will come to rise a political belief that believes in the dismantlement of artificial intelligence in society, that it's like, right, that this notion that it's a bad thing. Somehow, it doesn't matter how, the computer says, this is my data, it seems to be true. Do we let a computer, for whatever reason it wants to, again, because that's what we talked about. I mean, I went off on that little, it doesn't matter why, it doesn't matter what it perceives, be it anything involved to like a physical characteristic or anything like that. Again, what we said about machine learning is that you don't know. You have no idea why it decides to act. Yeah. All you know is that it has something in mind and it is trying to achieve that. Mm-hmm. Do we let this computer use that principle of machine learning in determining who gets to live and who gets to die? Does it come down to, we have no idea why the computer wants to kill the bicyclist, but it thinks that it's the right thing to do, as opposed to killing the driver?
I think the easiest answer to say is no for that.
We don't let the computer do it.
Yeah.
Well, then you got to do it. It's your job.
Then, yeah. If I didn't quit at that point, yeah, I would. Then I would have to somehow make a decision based on that. And I can't give you, obviously, I don't really think I can give you a one right now that's like, but that's like a strong answer, because I don't know what I would do in that situation. And I hope I'm never in that situation, honestly.
Again, I'm not saying that you should. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm not saying that you're wrong for not knowing. But what I'm saying is, the you is intentionally proverbial, right? I mean, let's be real. It's not going to be you. It's not going to be me who makes this decision. Yeah. At some point in time, some human being is going to be faced with the task of, do you ignore the problem completely, right, which we said defaults to killing the cyclist, only account for one aspect of the problem, which defaults to killing the driver? Do you intentionally qualify it, right, based on either killing the driver or killing the cyclist, just de facto? Mm-hmm. Do you intentionally qualify it based on your own standards for human life? Or do you allow the computer to make a decision based on its own standard for human life? You have to choose one of those. Like, you have to.
Yeah,
like,
I know, yeah.
Like, in some sense, it's unavoidable. One of those things has to be done. One of them.
As hard as that, like you and me thinking about this, as hard as for me this decision would seem, I could see like someone like doing like making a decision fairly quickly on this, only because like.
So well, I mean, it has to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to release
But
a car, like
I don't think they would even like have a hesitation. I think I'd already know what they would choose to begin with.
Well, I mean, I reckon I know where you're going, and to get there, I'm going to pose it this way: of those 5, doesn't factor in anything, defaults to killing, or I should just say doesn't factor in anything. Like doesn't take into account the cyclist because of poor design. In fact, you know what? We can even like strike that answer off because the notion that it wouldn't even calculate the fact the cyclist is there is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the first one is that it only accounts for that one factor, the cyclist, throws you straight into a wall.
Mm-hmm.
2, and there's 2A and 2B. 2A is that it accounts for the cyclist, and so it always defaults to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Or consciously always defaults to the wall. Like it knows that it's going to kill you. Not like the first one where it doesn't know that it's going to kill you.
Yeah,
Second one, it knows that it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it does that. Or 2B, which is it knows it's going to kill the cyclist. It knows it has the option to kill you. Mm-hmm. Defaults to killing the cyclist.
Yeah.
3, which is that you know that some human being has coded in some standard for morals, or some standard based on their own morals, into the car. You don't know what it is, but you know that some human being has coded it in there.
Yeah.
Or you know that the computer is coming up with its own, again,
rationale for,
like super advanced, way ahead of all of us, rationale, exactly, behind killing a human being. Which of those cars are you going to buy? I know which one I'm buying.
I'm buying the 5th option.
Are you? You're going to take 5?
Yeah.
Wait.
I'm
the computer's doing the most.
I actually answered. I was thinking of if I were to choose which when I was thinking about which route to go if I was a coder.
To make a okay.
If I was making the car and I was coding it, I would just let the AI make the decision, just based on the sole standpoint that it makes a decision that's not favorable, that people find unfavorable, like it hits somebody that it makes a decision that it's between the president and, I don't know, a governor, and it hits the governor, and it happens to be in that state that the governor was representing, and the whole state is like up in like a very like up and riding over it. That person that made that code could have the in their own mind have the idea of knowing that I didn't make that decision. The robot did.
See, now we get back to the trolley problem, though. But can they? Because it's not. It's
because now it's no longer your. It's as much as that seems. It's not. You have a definitive thing you can point to. It's not
right.
The same
as it was a computer, right?
Yeah, but that's not like the trolley problem because.
I'll tell you why it is. Because you also had the conscious decision to ensure that didn't happen. Right.
Yeah.
So that becomes the question there. So there's
no, not really, because you didn't know it was gonna. You didn't know it could have. You were thinking of it as like it could happen, but you weren't. You didn't know that exact example would happen when you made that code. When you're looking at the trolley car problem, you know exactly what's gonna happen. You see the fact that there's a trolley coming and those 5 people will die. You see the ramifications up in front. You don't see the ramifications of what you've done right up in front. So when you make that, you could say, hey, it's the computer's fault, but you have the satisfaction of knowing that I made that, not knowing what that was going to be a result.
Okay. I'll give that much to you. Like the notion that you don't know the exact ramifications. But you can know that A, you had the option, or I should say A, you took the option of not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you know that you had the option of programming in your own sense of morals. See, I mean, I think I don't think that particular example is great because it's a little right. Again, it questions the sort of like, I think most people would argue that the president is more important than a governor, but you just happen to be in that particular state.
Yeah.
I think like maybe like what would be better suited is like it's the president versus like a homeless man, and the computer decides to kill the president over the homeless man.
Yeah.
Because
It for some reason
It
knows.
thinks it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's calculated that that's correct.
Yeah.
But, right, you now have to live with knowing that, man, if I had just done that myself, if I had just coded it, if I had just told it, obviously you killed a homeless man over a president.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the trolley problem. Like there is that ambiguity where it's like you have to accept the fact that you could have taken a different option where you could have been responsible, but you intentionally chose not to change anything.
Yeah.
And you didn't, and again, yeah, I agree, you didn't know what the outcome was going to be, which is in the trolley problem you do. But still, you knew that something could have gone amok. You decided to leave it in the hands of the computer.
Yeah.
As opposed into the hands of your own intuition.
In the end, like especially in that, ignorance is bliss. The less you know, I mean, the easier it becomes. The easier that easier it is to rationalize your decision. You didn't know. It's like you just don't know. You were. I guess like ignorance is bliss. Really, like the less you know, the easier it was.
But I don't know if I'd say that qualifies it. If that makes it.
I'm not. I'm not saying it's justified at all. I'm saying as a way of to be honest.
Your own coping with it. I mean, I understand that.
Yeah,
but
that's. I mean, you probably understand in your own heart of hearts that you should have stepped in some way and done something, because in the end, how can you say that our computer's morality, that's not even a human being, have the ability to understand like what's right and what's wrong? Like that's why would you, how could you allow that to happen? Like you said, how could you allow it sit there and let it and take a back seat to something that doesn't even understand, that doesn't even really like know what it's like to be a human being?
But the algorithm tells it it's right. I mean, that's there's no right answer. It's a debate that could go on.
Yeah.
I mean, but to be fair, that wasn't even initially what the question was. The question that had been posed, because you would answer that mistakenly.
Which car would you buy?
Which car would you buy? I think I know what I would say and what pretty much every person in society would say.
I think I buy the one that the human being was writing in the decision.
I mean, but also factor in the other ones, right? So you have a car that knowingly, or I should say, a car that unknowingly kills the driver, a car that knowingly kills the driver, a car that knowingly kills the bicyclist, a car that a car that evaluates based on human reasoning, and a car that evaluates based on computer reasoning. If I'm driving the car, I know what I'm buying.
Driver over cyclist, every day.
A car that knowingly kills the cyclist.
Yeah, any day of the week. Because again, that's like, which is a sad thing to say that someone would, that most people think, we think selfishly. We're here, we're buying something for ourselves. We're buying it so it could A, take us from point A to point B, and B, protect ourselves. That's what we buy a car for the most part. And that's what most people will decide.
Right. So why would you purchase anything that might possibly go against obviously it's your own best interest to live. It might not be society's, it's your own best interest to stay alive.
Yeah.
So why would you buy anything that could possibly ever contradict your own best interest?
You won't.
Which, I mean, gets into like a whole other sense of like
what's
consumerism.
Self-interest, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and why do people purchase things in the first place? But I think by and large, when you look across pretty much all of society, at no point is somebody going to purchase something that they know has the potentiality of killing them, quite possibly for reasons that either A, they don't understand, and some other person programmed in, or maybe for B, reasons that nobody understands.
Can understand. Yeah.
That nobody has a grasp on. That there's no sense whatsoever other than the fact that somebody's told you this algorithm's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's a tough thing to really think about.
Right,
and lot to like actually like when
it's
you're
loaded.
Considering all these, it's a loaded question because it just takes in so many different variables. One, like you're saying, like it takes like we were talking about before, of the value of a human life, your own, like, what your own idea of a value is, whether or not you want something else deeming the value. It's just, there's so many different variables for just something like that. It's like, it's impossible to answer.
And for me, like, through all of this, the craziest thing is to say this, basically. How many times would you say, we'll just call it, I don't know, over the past 6 months, have you, like, had some measure of conversation about, like, just the general sort of notion of, like, smart technology, be it a smart car, a self-driving car, something like that? How many times do you think maybe you've had this conversation?
Probably 5 times.
Okay, 5 times. That's fair. The past 6 months. How many times have you spoken, or for that matter, even thought about, like, the ramifications of a car having to decide your fate, and whether or not, like, that was a difference between like a program decision or a computer generated decision? You ever thought about that?
Not until today. No.
I would argue I don't even think it's, like, worth to say I would argue. Like, I will state, like, fact of the matter, most people do not. The large majority of people do not.
Exactly.
Would you say that there's some potentiality that perhaps at some point in the future you would have purchased a self-driving car?
Yeah. And
prior to this conversation,
I would not have thought about it. That's what exactly.
Now that you've had this conversation,
well, I think about it. Yeah. Right. If I remember this conversation, like 10, 15 years down the road,
right?
Yes, I probably will.
I mean, that's, to me, like, this is one of those things where it's like, if nobody told you about it, and obviously I'm not claiming here to, like, have invented this train of thought. Obviously, I have heard it places, and that's why I know of it, and I've explored it a lot in my own philosophies, which is why I have some, like, degree of control over like a conversation in a sense. But, like, it's, again, like, it's not like I'm some genius who came up with this. Like, no, I wouldn't have thought about it either until somebody told me to think about it. And like, it would have played no factor into me purchasing a car. But now, like, even if it's not going to be your deciding factor, which I think, like, when you think about it, for most people, it'd be like, I think the only argument is that such a situation is pretty rare. It's, in fact, I would say extraordinarily rare.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, you're talking the difference between your life and your death. But again, like, now that I know that, the first instance of some company suggesting that they have a truly viable self-driving car, well, I mean, the first thing I'm going to want to do, and I'm sure there are going to be some other people too, and I would not doubt that the company is not going to want to release their sort of code on this, because they had to have thought about it. So like, it's a problem you have to deal with in some capacity. One of those 5 things we listed before. But that's what I'm going to want to know. I'm going to want to know if your car has to either kill me or kill someone else, what is it going to do?
I agree with you 100%.
Right. And it's something, again, as we just said, you wouldn't have even, like, remotely thought about. Not remotely.
Not in the slightest.
Right. And yet it is, I would argue, a pretty pressing thing.
Yeah, exactly.
In my opinion, such a microcosm for the direction. I mean, to make, like, this big old grand loop back to what we started talking about, just this general sense of AI, and what it means. And I mean, like, in its own, like, very simplistic context, right? Like, you don't even have to take it all the way to what we said, like, that 5th step was, where the computer makes its own decisions based on its own calculations. Just the very notion of, like, I'm going to kill that cyclist if I hit him, but I'm going to hit him. That in itself is some manner of artificial intelligence, because nobody's making that decision. It's not the driver, and the person who coded that isn't in that car at the moment hitting a button that makes it hit the cyclist.
Which makes it art. Yeah.
It's just the code is in place, and it's doing what it's got to do. Again, it's not quite like the whole machine learning sort of artificial intelligence, but that's why I made the stipulation. Some machine learning is implemented in artificial intelligence, some isn't. Some artificial intelligence has machine learning, some doesn't, right? But like, before you can even begin to tackle things like that, and people try to jump onto this whole like, oh, the AI is going to take over the universe. I'm not saying like that's ridiculous to think and that like it's not a possibility. In fact, if anything, like it's what I'm saying is in the contrary. It's like, sure, maybe, but like, we need to worry about even smaller things. Basically what you're doing is you're saying, hey, we need to right now start thinking about a way to stop the sun from exploding. It's like, I'm with you. That's going to be a problem one day. But there are so many other things.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, maybe can we stop,
can we try and
slaughtering all the polar bears first?
Exactly.
Like, could we
worry about like, I don't know,
can we not melt the earth? Like, is that
the hunger in multiple countries?
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Like that.
People
slightly more pressing matters like
People are starving. People are dying. A lot of stuff.
War everywhere. I mean.
Yeah, I understand. Nuclear weapons. That's a concern of mine. I get it. The sun exploding. I'll give it to you. It's a little bit bigger than a nuclear explosion. However,
we won't be able to see the sun exploding if we get into a nuclear war.
Right. I think we have a couple things in the way before we get there. Right. So like that's my thing. So right when you talk about people like that, I mean the one who we mentioned way back at the beginning of the episode, talking about there's this huge potentiality that AI is going to invade the universe, and oh no, AI robots have killed 29 Japanese scientists. It's like, don't even perpetuate those stories, because here's the thing. First of all, again, in that case, it's fake. And what you're doing, here's my big problem. And this is a really exciting part. This is where it ties into the name of the show, Political Inaccuracy. When you do stuff like that, you're giving people like the false sense of inaccuracy.
Exactly.
You're making people think, the people on that side are lunatics. Like, the people arguing against AI, they're the same people who are talking about getting abducted by aliens. And they write the whole thing off
exactly
as lunacy. My all time, it's a wonderful use of this. I can't like credit Bill Nye with coming up with this, but I know he says it all the time in regards to climate change. What he says is that people opposed to the notion of climate change, of human-induced climate change, people who don't believe in it, what they do is they point to what's called scientific uncertainty, right? Mm-hmm. So when we say, right, that the atmosphere or the level of carbon in the atmosphere is going to raise by some amount of percentage, or the polar ice caps are going to melt by some amount of percentage, the sea level rises by some amount of percentage, and we say plus minus some extent, right? And we say, we think that it's going to be about this. What they do is they take that word think, and rather than assuming it to mean think, meaning like it could be a little more, it could be a little less, they take that word think to mean
it may or may not happen.
It could be true, it could not be true.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So it becomes a huge sway. And again, exactly what he says, it's slipping my mind at the moment, but basically is he says they take scientific uncertainty and they use that as a justification for doubt about the thing as a whole. Yeah,
which couldn't be far more wrong to do.
More far from the truth, exactly. Right, and so then you apply that back to AI, and you have these people who are lunatics, who, and again, not even they're lunatics, because like at some extent, okay, if you're talking about being abducted by aliens, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about AI being like terribly destructive to modern society.
Yeah, it's the point where it could negatively afflict us eventually.
I'm with you, but there are people who aren't there yet. And there are people who are looking at that and going, all right, they're a doomsdayer is what they are.
Yeah.
And they're pointing to this. And every time you perpetuate that argument, just like, oh, AI is going to kill us all, you leave that in the air for everybody else to come by and go, yeah, man, all those people are dumb. They don't know. All those people don't know what they're talking about. Or all those people are too crazy.
Yeah.
When there's very, very, very valid things that should be looked at. I said on a much more minute level. Do we program our cars to kill drivers, to kill pedestrians, or to make the decisions themselves, or to make the decisions based on some pre-programmed notion of the value of human life?
Yeah.
As I said, that's an extremely pressing question. It's one that I'm going to say needs to be answered within 15 years.
I'd say less.
Probably.
To be completely honest with you, as much as like it's starting, or it's already starting.
Google has a self-driving car.
Exactly. You're starting to see not only like ones that like the Google ones, but like actual cars that can drive, like go at like very high speeds. The ones that not necessarily like there's a driver in the car, but it basically guides them, and it's like it's like you've seen those commercials.
Familiar.
Yeah, that itself is already could become a problem if something were to happen where this would come into question. I think it's something that should be dealt with as soon as possible. I really believe. I don't think there's a time. I don't think it's like a sort of a timeline of how much time we have left. I think it's already here. It's something it's probably fair to say. I mean, in part of what we were saying before, I think we even stipulated that like just the general notion of like, should a car try to brake or should it try to swerve? Those already exist. No, exactly.
Like a ar will try to brake to get out of an accident, or a car will try to swerve to get out of an accident, right? One, again, we're saying the braking not effective in time, kills the cyclist. Swerving will kill the driver. Yeah, I mean, there might very well be cars that are capable of producing this sort of a situation currently on the market. Again, has anybody thought about coding this into it? I mean, you have to have in some capacity. There has to be something there.
I mean, wait, are you saying have they done it, or should it be?
Like, have they produced a code? I mean, my point is like back to the like the whole 5 things.
There should be. Like,
one of those 5 things has to be true. Has to be true.
Exactly. Yeah.
Again, either it's nothing's coded. It's coded to always not kill the cyclist, which would kill the driver. It's coded to intentionally kill the driver to not kill the cyclist. It's coded to intentionally kill the cyclist to not kill the driver. It's some human evaluation or it's some computer evaluation. One of those things has to be true. If you have a car that's capable of this situation, it doesn't have to be a car, any computer program that is capable of encountering a similar sort of situation, one of those things has to be true.
Yes,
one of them.
I agree with you on that, yeah.
Right. And so that means that the cars on the market that are capable, again, I don't know for certain that I can say that there is a car on the market capable of reproducing the situation, but I think there is.
Yeah.
I think by now there might genuinely be.
Yeah.
That car has to have one of those 5 options.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how much did the people who chose one of those options really think about it?
It didn't even cross their mind, except for the ones that might be like the really skeptic ones. They might have thought about it, but to be honest, I don't think a single person thought about it. Because as much as a huge problem that could be, and how important that question is, I bet my life that they were just excited to get the car because now it was more convenient for them to have a car that drives itself. They were more attracted to the fact that they don't have to drive anymore from place to place with a car that they're sitting in the front seat and the steering wheel is physically moving. They were more like in awe by that idea than the actual than a real question.
Right, and the ramifications behind such a thing.
Yeah, and I think that's where a car company will get away with it for probably first 2 years it's been selling, until even like something as minor as like a minor accident where someone breaks their wrist. And there's like where this same problem arises, right. And someone doesn't die necessarily, but they swerve and their airbag deploys and they get a concussion.
Somebody realizes, wait a minute.
Until
right.
Someone brings it to the public, that's when it'll become a problem. But it's like the idea of a self-driving car is like a mirage for the actual problems that could be, the underlying problems that could be.
I get that completely. Right. I mean, it's the notion of like, oh, look, a shiny thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Technology versus the morality behind technology. People are going to be excited about new things.
Yeah.
Well before they're ever going to begin to think about what those new things might mean. And I mean, then this in some sense, I gotta think. There was some connection. I wanted to try to bring it back a little bit. Um. Anyway, taking this, right? Taking the whole car thing. Right.
Well,
What scares me, right, is this is something that you said yourself. Obviously, you've thought about self-driving cars. Like, it's people talk about it. It's a thing that people are interested in. You never thought about this in particular.
mm-hmm.
First of all, this is one issue. How many more could exist within like the concept of self-driving cars that people just haven't conceptualized yet?
It's probably millions of them. I'm sure.
I don't even know if I want to say that. But I'm saying like serious issues. Again, I'm gonna argue a handful, at least a handful,
Yeah.
like serious and pressing issues. And then self-driving cars are a new thing. How many things that already rely on computer programming or similar, right, computer-based logic are there already implemented in society that we haven't thought about these things, right? So we're talking about Watson before. That might be the connection I was trying to make. We're talking about Watson before for a while. Watson already exists. Watson has some program that says, hey, this thing, do it good. I know what I was trying to do. I was trying to connect, but when we were talking about the traffic throughput problem, right? And I said, what if you code it just for maximum throughput and you forget about the pedestrians, right? Where can there be human error in all this? Where people forget to think, just, whoops, I forgot to consider that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or from like the public's perspective, whoops, I forgot to think about that as being a problem.
Yeah.
Right? So again, take something like Watson. I mean, Watson's been around since mid-90s. Right? When did he beat that guy in chess? Like 1996 or something like that?
Yeah.
He's been around since then, and I mean, as I said, he's being used in very real situations in hospitals. What? And I'm not even gonna like attempt to sit here and try to think about it because I'm sure plenty of other people have. And just thinking on your own doesn't mean you'll necessarily come up with something. But what sort of problems directly congruent to what we're just talking about with that car might Watson have? Or might anything else have? Might I don't know, the landing schedule for like airplanes, if that's computerized, if that's being automated now, one flaw in the code or one flaw in the way that we perceive things might that have, right, that completely throws off like how it evaluates things. It's that's what concerns me is what is the potentiality for this like malleated across all of society.
I mean, if we're talking about the potentiality, then it could be there's probably loads of potential.
Right, you could argue it's limitless, but I mean, even like just like thinking like very rationally, very realistically, the most conservative thing I could say, hands down, most conservative thing I could say is that there are at least some more. There are at least some other problems that we haven't thought about. At least some. And I mean, we've stipulated that this car thing is a pretty big frickin' deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so then there could be other, like, pretty big deal problems. And again, that is like the most conservative thing I could possibly say. I mean, like, being realistic, it's probably way more than some.
Yeah.
Hundreds, could be thousands. But at the very least, there has to be some. And if they're all like as big a deal as this car thing, and if they all affect something as widespread across society as motor vehicles, right, as transportation, well then, what does that mean for our society as a whole? And our use of computer programming and in some sense artificial intelligence and all that.
Yeah. It just means we may be we're in some trouble. Especially because of the fact we've already implemented AI. If there are problems that are even if, like you said, a handful that are already that already presented that we not even noticed yet, we're in trouble. Because if they keep popping up, they'll just compound and just probably sooner or later lead to the idea of whether or not we should be using it at all.
And the question is, first of all, how far have we come to accept some of these things? And at what point have we accepted something so heavily that new information about it doesn't matter, that we don't care, right? So it's like, fortunately, we're thinking about this car thing now. These cars aren't big in society. Suppose we're thinking about this problem only came up, people only started thinking about it 30 years from now. And there were, maybe not everybody had one, but there were like we'll say as many electric cars as there are now.
Yeah.
There were self-driving and intelligent cars then, right? Like if it were that big a percentage, if it were that big, if it were that widespread across society, and then we started thinking about this, would people even be willing to say, all right, we'll give it up?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know. Actually, I couldn't even. Actually, I take back that answer. I don't even know. Cause I guess it would depend. I guess it would initially depend on how much people like the product, I guess, or how much people understand. Like, we're talking about like self-driving cars in general, or we're talking about AI. That is what I actually want to know.
Anything
with AI,
anything that has the same potentiality as like the self-driving car paradox, we'll call it the self-driving car paradox.
Okay. All right. So if anything like that, I think it would come down to if people understood all the how accessible it's made their lives, or how it's all the good that it's done first. I think if people understood that, then they wouldn't want to give it up as easily. But if people weren't aware of it, and then these problems kept surfacing, and it came to the final conclusion of whether or not people would not want it anymore.
Right.
Any longer, I don't think.
Well, then, to that, should that play a role in like the benefit that this thing has created for society? Should that play a role? In if we know that there's something terrible, but we try to qualify it by saying, "Oh, but it's done all this good."
No, it shouldn't.
Shouldn't play a role.
I don't think it should.
I agree with you there, and the reason I bring it up is, again, not to like intentionally try to make you contradict yourself, but based on what we had previously said about is that sort of thing qualifiable, right? I mean, we had that whole sort of discussion on like the meaning of human life and blah blah blah, and is it okay to say that, like, well, it gives us this much benefit, but it has this much loss, but the benefit outweighs the loss, so let's just roll with it? I'm going to say no. I mean, maybe it's in some way illogical, maybe it's in some way irrational, but I think it's probably more moral, right, to say that, sure, it gives us this amount of benefit, but it has a very clear and inherent cost, and an unfair cost, right, to those whom it affects.
I agree with, and I understand what you're saying. But remember, I'm sure you remember the example you had given, where you were able to predict with 99% certainty that there's one person based on DNA would save lives with a cure of some kind of disease.
Right.
Another person would become a serial killer. The extreme idea of someone taking someone else's life is almost to me is like alarming, that it makes it worthwhile to almost have the 1% chance of being wrong, because that's such it's such an extreme negative. Like if you had said something like one person's, I don't know, he goes around throwing stuff at people.
For example, dressed up as a frog.
So throws spoons at Chris Christie.
Right, at former New Jersey state governor. Yeah.
I clearly would have said that's not that chance of that if we were going to actually kill that person.
Right.
All those people that have that similar DNA and it might be wrong, I would say obviously not.
Okay.
But to me, the idea of just a serial killer, it's not just one person now, it's more than one person.
Right. I understand
That's
that.
what it was to me.
And I mean I don't know how much you've picked up on this. I don't know how much the audience has picked up on this. I'm not very much about giving my opinions. I like to keep my opinions to myself because they're mine. But
I'm well aware.
But I like to play devil's advocate. That I do. So that's why I probably seem to contradict myself a lot. But that's just because I want to make you think. That's the whole.
Yeah.
Not to say that like I'm supposed to be teaching you things here, you either being you, Frank, or being the audience. But I think a lot of this, and it'll vary from episode to episode. If it's something that I have knowledge on, then I'll lead the discussion. If it's something you have knowledge on, then by all means you will. But it's this notion of the one, what we'll call the one with the knowledge, should intentionally make the other person think.
Yeah.
Right? That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong about things, but I want to say, well, look at it from this way, or well, look at it from this way, or well, maybe that's not right because, and then I want to make you contradict, again, not necessarily contradict yourself, but I want to make you think about what you said and go, you know what, maybe that isn't totally correct, and try to reclassify and requalify all of it, and I think that's a good thing. So like as I said, like I'm not really about to go generally like stating my opinion on things.
Yeah.
In this case, I will. I'll tell you I will. And for me, the notion of having any uncertainty at all
is not worth
in the taking of a human life
is not worth it. I don't think
is not. Well, that's what I mean. You're saying that if there's some fractional amount of
I wasn't giving. I was just like almost finishing.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, exactly right. So you're saying if it's some very fractional, you can call it infinitesimal. Maybe not that. That's probably a bit too extreme. But some fractional amount of percentage of saying that that you're wrong, but it's for an obvious good. It's for an obvious. You're stopping then somebody else from who's going to kill 30 other people.
If it's such an extreme situation,
right?
Then
you're willing to make that exception.
Yes, it's an exception, and I wouldn't say go ahead and say it's moral at all, because clearly there's no moral in that at all, in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. But I would accept it. That's the only the one.
That's fair.
Time.
And it's at this point that I'm going to say, okay, I disagree. And that's and again, you can qualify it in that one particular case.
Yeah.
I'm going to say for me that no, it's in the case of just in general, just so long as there exists uncertainty, I'm not in any manner going to qualify suggesting that one person's life is in any way worth more or worth less or more deserving of ending than another's. That's me.
Yeah.
Which it's a fair thing to disagree on. I don't think that you're irrational for thinking so. If anything, I accept the fact that my belief is probably the one that would be considered more irrational. But it just I guess really it has to do with your own really just your own inner thoughtful feelings on such a thing. And it's an interesting topic in its own right. But I mean in that vein, right, to bring it back to the whole right topic of general AI, be it like the auto car paradox. That's what I'm going to call it from now on. That goes well. The ACP, auto car paradox, right, or other things involving that. Just the idea of giving any amount of control over ourselves up in any capacity, right? And I don't want to say that like in the meaning where it's like, oh, so you don't want to give up like control to the government for your safety. No. I completely agree with that. That's not my point. Giving up our in a sense our sentient ability to make decisions as human beings. It's one thing if you give that up to another sentient human being who's capable of making decisions. Yeah. But to give it up to a thing that, again, like going back to the machine learning thing,
it's unknown. We
don't understand. And like that's something I tried to really to hone in on in the beginning. I
Yeah.
don't know how well I did, but
No,
like that's
you did. I understood where you were getting at with
such a
that.
huge
Yeah.
point. It's not like we're not totally sure what's going. We have no idea. As I said, it's like showing a second grader calculus, and going, obviously it works, and having them go, don't know how to add yet. Like
Yeah.
what are those squiggly lines for?
Yeah.
It looks like hieroglyphics. And
Yeah,
that's-
exactly.
And that's really
Well, just the idea of it is terrifying, to be honest with you. It's just that something that is completely unknown is making decisions for you, and if in extreme cases is a matter of life and death. So I posed the question, not out of any like trying to challenge you in any way, just as a pure curiosity. At one point, will we ever be able to measure human life in any way, as humans? Will we be able to measure it?
like with like an inherent difference of value is what you're trying to say?
Yeah, because I know we've tried before, but will we ever be able to successfully do it?
You say so, like successfully, as in you're assuming that it's desired, though.
Yes.
It's desirable to have a system by which to measure the inherent value of a human being?
Yeah, it would have to be something desirable, I think.
I would argue that first and foremost, it's not desired. That it isn't desirable. I think
Yeah.
it's based on my own beliefs and just like it's not even like a religious belief per se, but I believe in the sanctity of human life. Again, with nothing, not to like open this whole can of worms, but nothing due to religiosity, but just like on my views on like the rarity of life, as it is. I mean, I value all life because, and this is something I'm sure we can get into another time. When you look at the universe and like how actually special life is, and some people argue it's not, because we're made of carbon, and carbon's the most abundant element in the universe, and our next most important element is like hydrogen, which is also the next most abundant element, and then oxygen, which is also the most abundant. So it's like, okay, I understand that, but my point is, it's not like life is everywhere in the universe. Like it seems, at least as far as we're aware, to be pretty rare. So just in that sense alone, in the innate sense of rarity behind life, including human life, I think the very nature of trying to qualify a scale by which to judge it contradicts the beauty that is life itself.
See, I actually agree with you on that question. I agree with you on that. With that, I don't think there's any possible way you could value human life.
Not only do I
believe that too, honestly.
Not only do I not think that there is or ever will be a valid way. Again, people, as you said, and it's absolutely correct to say this in terms from a historical perspective. People have tried. People do it. That doesn't make it right.
Exactly.
But it's not even that I'm trying to say that it's not correct, or that we'll never find the correct way. I don't think there is a way. I don't think it's desired. There's no reason that I have to want to do that. I don't want to qualify human lives. And I understand why one would, because then it makes like the autocar paradox easier to solve.
Yeah.
Because if there's a perfect way to qualify a human life, then that question has an easy answer. When you figure out which one's more important.
Exactly.
And you get, I mean, not to say you get rid of the one who doesn't, but that's the one who in that situation the car is going to calculate to kill. Right? It makes that simple, but I don't think that just because something gives you an easier answer or makes you feel better about yourself or better about life means that it has to be true.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's the end all be all, the way to go. I don't think, and I agree with you on that. I don't think it's by any means something that should be executed in any way. I don't think, because even though it sounds like it's a right way, it seems like the right way. I don't think, just based on my own like morals, it just doesn't seem fair to do that.
Right. I mean, and it's a matter entirely of where your moral conscience falls, I guess, and just your whole perception on these sorts of issues.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's not a thing we can ever do because it's by definition impossible. And I'm going to say it's not a thing that I would ever want to see us try to do. Because every time we've done it in the past, every time we've tried to qualify a human in the past, it's been in the form of anti-Semitism, or in the form of racism, or in the form of utilitarianism, something like that, where we try to qualify some people as better than others, and then we always end up regretting it later.
Exactly.
And I don't think there's any way. I don't think at all there is any way by which to. No, I don't think so, and I don't think that it's a thing that like a computer could solve for us, or that some intelligent mind. Because as brilliant as like some algorithm may be, I don't think it's solvable. It's like you could come up with. Here's an interesting thing to bring up. Is it possible, you reckon, that if you came up with, if you invented some brilliant calculator, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it could solve for some number divided by 0? We define it as impossible, but
yeah,
maybe it's just not something that we understand. Maybe there is an answer. Maybe there's a finite and discrete answer that we just don't understand. Which at the same time almost contradicts itself, because we, in some sense, invented math. In some sense, discovered. In some sense, invented mathematics.
Exactly. So
it's interesting, and actually, I'm struggling now to figure out exactly what I was trying to say. Okay, yeah. I that's our computers capable of answering what are technically impossible questions? I'm going to say no, probably not. I definitely think that there are some things in life that can't be answered.
Yeah.
I mean, math might not be the best example of it, but sure, there are some things in math that we define as undefined.
Then almost like if computers would be basically like disproving something we've invented, our own invention, like be like basically disproving, like if it
In some sense.
if it disproves something that we find not possible to figure out, then it's almost disproving something that we created and invented, and like it's almost like how could it possibly do that?
I get that. I can, like, I'll be honest, I can wrap my mind around that paradox, like around that self-contradiction. Like, that's fair, and I see that, like I reckon that foreseeable at some point. However, that being said, again, I think there's a certain impossibility to some things that you can't solve via an algorithm, which at the end of the day, machine learning, AI, anything like that, it's an algorithm. It's a set of instructions. And no matter how that set of instructions like molds or fixes itself or upgrades itself or whatever, I just think that there are some things you just can't access via a string of ones and zeros.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's some things you just can't put like a number on. I don't think, or you can't either solve with numbers or just even put a number on. I don't think so either. Some things are just so objective, not really like nothing to do. It's just basically based on opinion, I think.
Yeah, I mean not even. Yeah, I guess you say there's some things based on opinion, but that's not even totally what I'm getting at.
Not necessarily like opinion. I mean, just like
I just think there are some things that are just purely unanswerable.
Yeah,
by their own.
That's what I meant. I meant the only way you can come up with an answer is based on someone's opinion on it. Like that's what I.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's what I meant to say.
Again, not that I disagree, but I think that there's a better way of sort of like deriving how it is that we call these things. You know, what it is that we define them as. But no, that's totally fair. So, in some sense, though, when you think about it, that has some like measure of poeticy behind it, in the sense that as much as one might want to fear the likes of an advanced intelligence, right, in the form of some computing machine.
Yeah.
There are some things which humans currently struggle with now that even a computer would itself never be able to overcome.
It's almost like a poetic irony kind of.
Right. That in some sense, right, there are things that humans have achieved that computers could achieve much beyond.
Yeah.
Yet there are some confines, some walls that humans have hit that a computer would be just as barred by, would be just as unable to pass. Which, I mean, I don't know what that means in the end. Is it going to save us all from being killed by the Terminator? I don't know. Probably not. That's my guess is no. But it's just interesting to ponder that, like, even the most, I guess as you could call it, like, hypothetically perfect thing that one could create, you know, like an advanced intelligence that is capable of I'm not going to say knowing everything, but is capable of calculating everything.
Yeah.
Everything calculatable. There still exists that range of things that are incalculatable, which remain beyond the reach of such a machine.
It's just I don't even know how to put it. It's just something that it's like a phenomena, basically. That's something that it just goes to show you, no matter how advanced something is, there's probably always gonna be something that something as advanced as AI can't solve. Just shows that. I don't know. I almost think that kind of proves that there's just more to what is going on around us. I think.
I believe that to the nth degree.
No, I don't mean just like around humans. I mean around everything we create, and even things that we deem as advanced past us.
Around the universe, I think we have
that's what I was trying to get.
To me, one of the most interesting things about, like, our thought on knowledge. Human beings, especially around, like, this computer age, because we've had such a scientific boom over the last 100 years, we tend to think that our understanding of the universe as it sits right now is fairly accurate. Would you say that most people do?
Yeah, I would say
okay.
A large portion of
I want you to look at history, and I want you to tell me, how many times has our understanding of the universe been even remotely accurate?
Almost none. Never, was it?
Never. Right, exactly.
I mean, we thought the Earth was flat for probably
for a while, and we thought it was tiny, and then we thought the planets were on disks in the sky,
and the sun,
on rings in the sky,
and all the planets revolved around us, and we were the center.
And now we think that just because we've invented a couple fancy numbers and we've given names to a couple fancy formulas, that we understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But, like, who's to say that we're not just as blinded now as we were then? I mean, sure, at the time there were, like, certain things blocking, you know, scientific advancement. You know, one could argue just like religious beliefs at the time and the church as an institution. But I mean, there were plenty of things beyond that. I mean, there were many astronomers who still didn't really figure out what the universe was, you know. And in some senses, they didn't have the technology, but in some senses, they just didn't have the ability to even fathom, you know, what it was. And I think to for any reason suggest that we right now might be different,
it's kind of ludicrous.
It's unfounded. Yeah, it's absurd.
It's a possibility. I mean, I'd like to think that we have.
Well, I think it's a probability that.
You think so?
That what we think now is, I'm not gonna say entirely wrong, but, like, largely wrong. I think it's a probability.
Maybe it is. I don't know enough about the. I'm not even that well informed on what we think of the universe is. So
astrophysics and all that. That'll come up soon.
Yeah,
that'll be. We've got a few guests lined. I don't want to spoil anything. We've got a few guests lined up who wish to speak about exactly that. So we'll get to it.
Well, I can't wait for that. But I mean, it seems like based on history. History repeats itself. It seems like there's a very good chance that, like, especially what you just said, that it could be possible. I think so.
No, that our understanding of everything is inherently flawed.
Yeah.
And inherently incomplete.
Yes, I would think incomplete, but I wouldn't think it was completely wrong. I would think it was just wrong in, like, different aspects of it. But I would like to think that our general understanding is pretty, not on point, but, like, is somewhat close.
I mean, like, when you look at, again, like, into history, like, you could say, like, old models of the solar system, it's like, I mean, I guess you kind of got orbits right. Like the idea that something orbits something else. Sure, but they don't orbit us. They orbit
true.
the sun. You know, so it's like, where do you draw the line? Like, sure, they technically got some things right.
Yeah.
They thought that space existed. Okay. They thought that there
whoop-de-doo.
were other planets. We'll give it to them, right?
Yeah.
They acknowledged that there was a sun. Again. But, like, beyond that, you know, it's when you look at it like that, it's like, yeah, sure, they got a couple things right. They really did.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna qualify that as like impressive in my books.
Yeah.
And so to think that like what we have now is like impressively correct, I think that's silly. I think that's silly. And that might be the sort of thing that machines and algorithms and whatnot can lead us towards a better answer, but I don't think it'll get us towards better answers as I said, of the deeper things, which, as I've stated a couple times now, I just think by their very own definition don't have answers.
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to see when the AI creates its AI for itself.
There you go. Yeah, when the maker bots start making the doer bots, and the doer bots go to the instructor bots, and the instructor bot sends the doer back to the maker, and
yeah, when the AI comes out publicly saying that it doesn't know everything, well, even though we already know that, but it admits that to itself, and then it creates the artificial.
It's mad at itself. It shuts itself down.
No, it creates the artificial intelligence.
I just realized right now I didn't even get to tell you like my all-time favorite story about AI.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it. I'm interested. Let's hear it.
Oh, we want to hear it now?
Of course, why not?
We'll throw it in now. That notion of shutting itself down.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something so fascinating. It's absurd. A couple years ago, when I say a couple years ago, it's probably about a decade ago. Somebody made a bot to play Tetris. And it basically, in a sense, it was sort of machine learning. It played Tetris once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5, whatever it was, and took all those different times, and then it found which one had the highest score, and then it tried to play like that, and then it replicated itself, and it would try to learn the best method to play Tetris. But the thing is, when it comes to something like Tetris, or any game like that where it's infinite,
yeah,
by definition, at some point you lose.
Yeah.
It's impossible to go on in the game for infinity. At some point you lose. So after some time of this algorithm running, I don't remember how long it was. Could have been 4 days, could have been 4 months. I don't remember. But it had gotten to the point where it was like excellent at Tetris. Like, you know what? Honestly, like recalling the story, I could be a little wrong. Maybe it had some difficulty learning and it was struggling. Whatever it was, it had reached a point where like it basically stopped learning. Like there was improvement for a while, and either it hit like the ceiling where it like literally couldn't get any better, or it had its own ceiling where like the algorithm itself just failed to help it. And at some point through this, the program paused the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Never turned it back on.
It gave up.
I don't know what you want to call that. If you want to call that like digital suicide, but that to me, like this notion that an algorithm, which as I said, wasn't created like with it, like a notion of like its own self-awareness or like nothing like anything about that. Is algorithm which was created to play Tetris. That's it. Just to play Tetris. That when it realized that it could never really like achieve, in a sense, to go back to like the use of economic terminology, like infinite utility, that infinite utility was impossible, it just decided that the whole process of doing it wasn't worth it.
It was like futile. It was basically futile.
And so, I mean, as I said, that's probably because this is a real story. This is not the whole freaking robot in Japan thing. This is a true story. I mean, I encourage.
As much as they say that's false, I think it's real. That's me.
She was abducted by aliens. Okay, she knows what she's talking about. Maybe life isn't as rare as I think it is. If this lady's getting abducted by aliens like every other Thursday night. God, I gotta get myself whatever some of whatever she is on.
Wait, have you ever seen South Park?
I mean, I've seen episodes of South Park.
You seen the one where Cartman gets abducted by
I have not.
the alien? He gets abducted by aliens. And it's like nobody, not a single person believes him, but I believe him because he's real. I think he's real. I'm just kidding. I obviously don't.
Okay.
I'm confident that he's not real, but we can't be for sure. We can't be sure.
Well then, thank you for that, Frank. There's a possibility. I don't know. We'll program an AI to figure out.
That AI might have
birthed
Cartman.
Birth Cartman. Yeah. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. So anyway, yes. This whole Tetris thing. It's a true story. I encourage you, audience, by all means, go look it up, read about it. It is, in my opinion, so fascinating. As it is probably my favorite story within regards to AI. But what I love about it, like saying it now, is this then goes into what we had just sort of concluded there at the end. If an AI realizes, or as you said, Frank, once it admits to itself that there are things it can't answer,
It doesn't give up.
Well, I think
that's the answer.
This would suggest to us that it does. That it goes as soon as it realizes that the notion of infinite utility is impossible.
Yeah.
As soon as it proves to itself that it can never reach an infinite amount of utility, that it can't keep gaining utility, it'll just stop. Because that's its only goal, is to keep gaining. And if it realizes that it can keep gaining for now, but down the line it'll hit a roadblock, what's the point of getting to that roadblock if you're going to hit it eventually? So maybe.
I'm just gonna draw a comparison to the. You ever seen the movie War Games?
I have not.
The War Games. It was like this man had created a sort of like artificial intelligence, a supercomputer.
Okay.
They call it at the time. I think it was. I don't know when it was made, but and the game would always find a way to beat you at Tic Tac Toe. Okay. Always, somehow, and
isn't it like not possible though?
Just wait a minute.
Okay.
This is how ridiculous the movie was kind of at the time.
Okay.
But somehow this person worked at the government.
Mm-hmm. Building their Tic Tac Toe machine. Yeah.
The AI had developed so quickly that it was able to steal the United States launch code, all of its military like launch codes for its nuclear weapons. Yeah. I think it was the time of the Cold War. That's what it was. That's what it was a big time, and it had threatened. It had like left voice messages to the president of Russia saying that it was going to bomb it because it felt like it, and so I think toward like the whole thing goes where like, these two kids figure out about it and they end up going to the creator who's like living on a deserted island somewhere with fake robots and stuff. They bring him to the government, and he ends up like showing the computer that everything will end in death. That there's no way somebody could possibly win. Right. Because I think that the AI was thinking it was a game. Mm-hmm. He thought that, or it thought that it could play a game and start a nuclear war, and someone could win, and it could win, and it showed that. It eventually showed them that there are ways you can possibly not win in tic-tac-toe. And then somehow they were able to equate that to the idea of nuclear weapons.
Hold on. It took them how many years?
It was probably about 25 years.
To learn that it's not possible to always win a tic-tac-toe if you know what you're doing.
Up to this point.
Because you can if you're going second, you can always make it end in a draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I promise you.
What a film.
Premise of the movie.
What a film.
It was just funny because at the end when they were showing.
Did you know that you can't actually always win in tic-tac-toe? And the computer's just like, I don't know what I'm existing for then.
It had like a robot voice, and it said, it was like as it was going over the projections for like what would happen if he started a nuclear war. It just showed like all these like they were showing like little dots and stuff of them. The whole thing was just. The whole Earth ended up being a big ball of like fire. It was like, and like everyone's sitting there like, it's learning. And then at the end he goes, there is no possible way to win. And then it puts tic-tac-toe back up again and just wants to play. It was like, how did it go from that? Like,
what a film.
I couldn't.
I gotta
maybe I missed the premise of the movie, but
Kill
that's
myself.
Like exactly what
a copy of this. That sounds amazing. Well, anyway,
But it was just it gave up. It eventually gave up and created peace among the world.
right. And so then that there becomes the idea, the question. If you can prove to an AI, I mean to any algorithm, but particularly to an AI, that it's impossible to achieve infinite utility, that at some point it will always stop gaining utility, will you convince it that none of it is worth it and that it will shut down? Maybe. I don't know. Something that I think ought to be tried, and I don't know that it has too often.
I think
It's interesting.
I think it would, based on the idea that it's so advanced that it doesn't, that it's not like, people keep doing things sometimes. I don't think it has the ability to be insane. To almost,
Like, exactly. It can't be.
it doesn't have the ability to be insane to the point where it would keep doing the same thing over and over again and it's getting the same result.
Expecting the different result. Right, the definition of insane.
I think by just no understanding what artificial intelligence is, I think it would just not necessarily always shut down, but just give up and just move on.
And that, Frank, is, I think, why people ought to listen to, or in this case, watch our podcast, because we solve, like, we come up with answers to questions that have totally baffled scientists for years. How do we stop AI? It's simple. You just beat it in Tic Tac Toe a couple times.
Exactly. You just
maybe not that. But in all seriousness,
you give it Tetris, and we'll see.
Let it play Tetris for a couple months. It'll suck, and then it'll stop playing.
It's like we're on like the brink of the AI just taking over the world. They're like basically taking over the countries now at this point. Some little kid just goes on his computer, pulls out like digital Tetris, slides it over to the main boss. He's just playing it for. After 2 years later, he's just like, give up.
It's impossible.
He's like looking out the window.
It can't be done.
If I'm not perfect, then what's the point of living? And just
there you go.
Leaves.
And it's just see you later. Yeah. Oh man.
But seriously though, the idea that like if the possibility that an AI isn't able to solve something, what if it's like applicable to something that's like life or death for humans? Where like we are relying on it to figure out a solution for us.
Well, I think I've already stipulated that I don't like AI making decisions.
Oh no, I'm not saying I do either, but like say like
right to carry out the situation.
Like, the idea that eventually there'll be overpopulation, say we're trying to figure out a way to solve overpopulation and we can't figure out a viable option. And we ask Watson, we say, "Hey Watson, help solve
what's up?
Solve overpopulation for us."
Hey, maybe ask him how he's doing first.
Yeah, we don't always have to ask. We don't have to tell him to do things. We gotta ask him how he's feeling.
Does
he have the ability? Is he that advanced at this point?
To feel?
Like to have feelings?
I
don't think so, right? I hope not.
Do you think Watson identifies with a specific gender?
Is it aware of its own
identity? Yeah. Does it know?
I would have to say it just. If you ask what it is, it'll just say, "I'm an AI."
What gender is Watson? I mean, I think they assigned him to be a male, but I don't know if Watson appreciates that.
He just might have strep.
We should ask him.
It might just have strep.
It's just.
It might have just a deep voice due to strep.
It's just strep.
Chronic strep.
Oh my lord! All right. Well, I think there's not a whole I should say there's not much place to go from here without like jumping into a whole new thing, which we'll do next week.
Of course.
Or some
next
other week. Some week. I don't know. We'll do it at some point. We'll get around to it, I promise.
I really thought in that pause you were about to like jumpstart into another topic. I actually like thought we were for a second.
Now, let's go. All right, because this show's only at like 2.5 hours, so
let's go now.
Why not double that?
Cans.
No,
Let's
thank you.
Go. Get going.
They're great. I could tell you a lot of fascinating things about cans. We're not going to do it now. Remind me some other time. We'll talk cans. I got a lot of interesting facts. They're like water towers to me, kind of. Everything's like water towers to me.
Oh my God, they're like water towers you could throw at Chris Christie.
Dude, there you go.
Dude.
All right, now that's too many connections for my feeble little brain to handle, especially after all this.
I mean, I just got woke from artificial intelligence. I don't
Yeah, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Did you learn something, Frank? That's the real question. Did you learn something?
Honestly, I actually did. I learned a ton.
It's good. I'm glad. We should do this again sometime.
I hope so.
Wouldn't be bad. Hey, maybe next week.
Let me check my schedule. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, go for it. I think it'd be on your computer. You don't have a.
I write it on my.
You don't have a watch.
No, I write it on my forearm.
Also, a watch wouldn't tell a schedule. It tells a time.
I write it on my forearm.
No, but
Stop being.
Okay.
I'm okay. I'm good that week.
Good. All right. You too. We'll see you there next week. Meaning probably Sunday, because it's I think when these go up. Hey, thanks for watching. We appreciate it, or listening. I don't know if the video thing really happened. I hope it did. I don't know if it did. But I appreciate you nonetheless for listening or for watching or for whatever it is. Frank appreciates you too. Tell him, Frank.
I appreciate you very much.
See that? There you go. We solve mysteries here. Nobody else solves the mysteries we solve. We're good at what we do.
We ask the big questions that nobody.
And then we answer the
the
big questions. We ask the questions that nobody wanted to ask, and then we give them the answers that nobody cared to hear. There you go. I don't know what more you could possibly want from us. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun.
It has. Yep.
I enjoyed. Please let us know what you think down in the comments. Any more questions that you want us to address on this sort of stuff? I'm sure we'll come back to it at some point. Leave them down in the comments. But definitely, we want to hear what you all think. All the questions that I've asked apply to everyone, because I just think they're interesting in their own right. All right. I think that's going to about do it from us for now. But once again, we appreciate you all watching. And I do really hope that you all enjoyed. But for now, goodbye.